What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to little day 2 2025 NFL Draft reaction show. Plenty to talk about, and it's even better because it's not a solo show. It isn't going to be just one person rambling around, getting lost in what they're talking about. We have a great group of folks in here tonight. I'm going to let them go around the horn, introduce themselves quick, plug the channel, all that stuff as we're getting underway, and I'm sure more people will be filing in. We'll start Smitty. We can start with you on the bottom left, and we'll go a little counterclockwise because that's how I feel about what's going on with a certain QB. So we'll get to that.
What do we make there. Just over a minute in before it gets referenced?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Zachary Smith. Everybody calls me Smitty. You can find me on the Steelers Afternoon Drive Monday through Friday, talking Steelers ball, and then also host Around the 412, which comes out 3 times a week, talking Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins. All your platforms, YouTube or all your listening platforms. And then find me everywhere, Zachary Smith PGH, on all your social media platforms.
Here we go. Right. Who next?
CPGM Juice of Couch Potato General Manager. Couch Potato General Manager, predominantly on YouTube. That's where you can find us. Typically once a week, streaming live, everything, wall-to-wall coverage as it relates to the NFL draft. And then, of course, we're going to be turning the page on this 2025 draft class here in just about 48 hours. And summer scouting, I'm looking forward to it. I'm already, gearing up for this next draft cycle here for 2026. So looking forward to it. Again, Couch Potato General Manager on YouTube.
All right. I am. It's not all the way up there. I need to adjust it, but it's CPGM Drew. You see my Twitter handle, a part of the Couch Potato General Manager crew, one of 3. And you see Juice down there, and Headley's not here tonight. But yeah, man, it's everything Juice said. Wall-to-wall coverage, NFL draft. College football, obviously, might have a couple extra things going on this season that's coming to my mind, but we'll debut that down the line. But yeah, here to talk about this draft and the elephant in the room here shortly.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Jake,
let's do it.
Jake,
Yeah.
Before you say anything else,
okay.
I mean this in the nicest way for the Couch Potato guys. You guys are sick for this, for doing the amount of coverage for the NFL draft immediately when this one ends, jumping in the 2026 cycle. I appreciate it as somebody that wants to consume that content, but sickos.
Yeah. And Juice already got the safeties are people too thing. I know we're going to hear about Caleb Downs very, very quickly, and I'm all for that. I am all for that.
Listen,
let him know.
As an Ohio State guy, I'm all for that.
Let him know.
We have this thing where we can stamp a player, right? Can't be. We got some rules. You stamp your guy. You talk about him. That's been your guy from the very beginning. And I told you he can't stamp Caleb Downs, man. Can't be a 5-star guy. Can't be a top 3 at his position.
That's fair.
You got to dig deep to find that guy.
That's fair.
And he went right to Caleb Downs. No, sir, not allowed.
Got to find different safety then. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure Juice will find one. Got a few people in here. Drew Joseph and Ayers Joy are in here already. What's going on? I see the Belton pick. We'll get there. I will star that one. And Joseph coming in with loving the Savion one. I'm sure we'll get there as well. But we got to start here. And I know it's probably what?
Drew said, "Are you kidding me?" Another Drew.
Oh,
we
yeah,
were just
I know.
with the Drew in the other live stream
we
were doing.
We were. So Drew's everywhere. But Drew should be used to it. There are like 3 Josephs in this stream all the time. So. That's how it feels, Drew. I think that's the Drew in the comments. That is, but yeah, let's start here. I know it's been the center of the coverage, and I think a lot of people at my work were kind of like, yeah, this is all they talked about last night, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's probably a little excessive for somebody who I think maybe teetered on that first or second round discussion, right? And I think a lot of people had differing opinions on that, which is totally fine. So I think. Not as much of a story last night because we always make that out of the QB who falls. But at this point, there's no way you can't talk about this. Shedeur Sanders has not been picked in the first 102 selections of the 2025 NFL draft. And I don't understand it. Obviously, we'll open the floor up to whoever wants to start. But like this, Smitty, I know you were kind of saying kind of exactly what I think everybody's thinking at this point, because not only has it been 78 selections since Jackson Dart went, Not only has it been 62 selections since Tyler Shuck went, 10 since Milroe, it has been 8 selections since Dylan Gabriel was a pick by a team that, you know what, frankly, that's the team I would expect Dylan Gabriel to be picked by in the 3rd round, to be honest. It's the Cleveland Browns. But Gabriel goes 8 picks before Shedeur, and it might be more than that, but when all is said and done. Yeah. So I other than what Smitty you said, I mean, I don't know how else to paint the situation truly at this point.
So I probably will have, I don't know, I think I'm going to have the least to say on this, but I also feel like it's most prevalent to me being a Steelers fan. That was a team that was heavily linked to him, obviously even in the 1st round. And I kept getting like questions about him and if I had any intel in terms of how the meeting had went and stuff like that. And I was only hearing good things about it. Thought he was a real possibility at 21, depending on how the board broke. Harmon was one of those guys they weren't going to trade out of or really differ from. If he was on the board, that was their guy, and fully understand that. I think, you get a sense about how strongly they feel about a player when there's conversations about would they trade back if he's on the board, or if you're talking about liking, not loving a player, especially at that position, right? Like you got to have really strong conviction and love a guy if you feel like that's going to be your franchise quarterback. Never got the sense that was the case. At least from, people that I talked to within the organization and stuff like that. So I didn't really feel like as we got closer to it, that was going to be the direction that they want. That said, I certainly didn't think we'd be having this conversation tonight about him still being on the board. No. I wouldn't have thought he was going to get to 83 for them to have an opportunity to take him in the 3rd round. But when we got there, Caleb Johnson's still on the board. Understand them going that direction. It just feels to me like insane value right now. There's going to be no pressure, at least from like outside factors, maybe apply some pressure, whether it's actually there or the teams are like creating it themselves because of the presence of Dion. But at this point, you're not even talking about a guy where you're drafting to be like a starting quarterback. Like at this point, right? Like if you draft a guy in the 4th round or later, you're talking about inserting him as a backup quarterback. So it should be really interesting to see where the landing spot is. Heck, it still could be Pittsburgh at some point down the line here. I have no idea, but at this point, I just think whoever's taking him is getting really good value, and I have no clue what's going on internally inside the league.
Go ahead, Drew. Get in there.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder. Somebody has made a bet somewhere on, the Hard Rock app or FanDuel or something where they're going to make some big money that Shedeur wasn't going to be picked in the first 2 days of the draft. Because it's insane. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like you said, I thought, looking at today and kind of looking at the board and seeing where certain teams were, the Raiders, the Browns, the Saints at one point, and then the Steelers. I thought Steelers, or we even were thinking, we even talking maybe the 49ers might even be that team, right? I know, 49ers are talking to Brock Purdy, talking about a contract, but things can change as the draft unfolds. And I thought maybe that would be the other team, maybe the Rams. And I think I saw something on Twitter where they were actually thinking about it, but they didn't. They just decided, hey, we're not going to go that route with their last pick. I think it was the 90th pick. But this is one of two things. This is either there was a failure in a meeting so bad that word got round, or maybe multiple meetings ended that way, or I like to be the conspiracy theorist, and it's just collusion. Hey, we're going to show this kid and his family, we are them, right? And you're not going to be able to come in here and just, do what you want to do, right? Mm-hmm. It's one of the two, and once Dart's one thing, because that was kind of always a possibility, because if you fall in love with a particular player, I get it, but then Chuck, right out, basically out the gate. Milroe, again, I understand because the ceiling, right? Don't love the floor, but there's a high ceiling, maybe the highest ceiling out of all the quarterbacks. But then the Gabriel thing, I'm like, okay, all right, I'm okay. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
Explain it to me. Somebody has to tell me what the hell's going on, because I don't know.
Yeah.
It's clearly not about playing the quarterback position. It's clearly not associated with on-field play. Like that's not even remotely within the pantheon. Again, as you mentioned, Drew, everybody on this panel has mentioned it, right? The Dart conversation, I think Dart won the offseason, this pre-draft process, right? He showed up to everything, Mobile, threw at the combine. And relationships matter. Relationships matter, right? It's very clear, regardless of what industry that you're in, people like to be around people that they are comfortable with and speak the same language. And you understand what I'm saying? So with that being said, I think Dart absolutely helped himself throughout that process. He has an intriguing skill set as it is. He has his warts as well. But I think that's why, the pendulum kind of swung towards Dart being the second quarterback off the board, at least in my mind. And then, as Drew just mentioned, beyond Dart, to me, there is no football-related reason for any other quarterback to be selected ahead of Shedeur Sanders, based on my evaluation. Again, the consensus is that he does not possess the upper echelon physical traits, right? There's times where he takes a bad sack, whatever the case may be. But I did a mock a couple days ago with Jake, and I waxed about the toughness, the accuracy. Right? The fact that the NFL is a one-score type of league. Most games come down to the last one or two possessions. And seemingly that's when Shedeur plays his best football a lot of the time. So those types of things are the reason why I thought he was the second best quarterback in this class. And again, as this draft has unfolded, and as you've seen one team after the other, and again, it's not all 32, obviously, because not all 32 actually need a quarterback, right? But as you see these teams that aren't necessarily solidified at the quarterback position or have kind of those bridge type guys in place, you expect at some point on day two for it to happen, right?
Yeah.
And the one team that I keep on thinking about here is the Raiders, right? I think when Antonio Pierce was the coach prior to him being let go, I think there was already some discussions around that, and Dion and Antonio Pierce having a relationship. It's like, come get my guys, come get the Colorado guys. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And to take it a step further, the relationship that Shedeur himself has with Tom Brady being a part of that ownership group, it to me just made too much sense. But time and again, I thought with those back-to-back picks towards the end of the third round, surely one of those two picks, the Raiders would take them, right? You got Geno. Obviously, there's a certain level of familiarity with Pete Carroll, whatever the case may be. But you know what? Let's bring in Shedeur. Maybe we catch lightning in a bottle here, right? Again, based on what happens between the lines, there weren't. How many quarterbacks have been selected thus far? 4, 5?
5.
5 now.
5, I think.
5 with
Not
one.
There weren't 5 better quarterbacks than Shedeur Sanders.
No.
Right? So it lends us to, right, this is a message being sent. Or you failed so miserably in these interviews, right?
Yeah.
I've heard obviously a litany of different, excerpts in terms of feedback coming out of these interviews. And one of the things that kind of I was taken aback by was he didn't perform particularly well on the board. Right? And to me, that's a football thing in my mind. That's a football thing in my mind, right? And if that's true, again, I don't know. If that's true, I can understand why, again, he'd be pushed a bit further down. But again, even if he's prickly or as folks have said, entitled, whatever the case may be, even in those types of situations, there have been plenty of quarterbacks that have kind of come through that have had their warts or their concerns, but it's the quarterback position. Right? And if a guy demonstrates his ability to play the position at a relatively high level, you roll the dice on that because you're trying to solve for the most important position on a team. So again, it seems to me, again, there's a couple of different reasons why this could have happened. We're all speculating, right? But it seems to me that this really isn't about football. Right? I've only seen that one source talk about the board work to this point. If I had heard that more, I may have given it more credence. This isn't about football. This is very much about, all right, you've kind of have a bombastic background in terms of your family, in terms of how you carry yourself. You've indicated very early, prior to the pre-draft process, that there were certain teams that we're not going to play for, right? I've even gone as far to think about, well, certain organizations, certain GMs, head coaches are probably like, look, if we take Shedeur, who's to say that he's not lobbying for his dad, right, to take that leap to the next level and be a head coach, right? He's coached him at the high school and collegiate levels. Dion said recently that, he doesn't necessarily want to go there, but that's a unique opportunity. To coach an NFL team and your son, that's a very unique opportunity. So, again, I don't think anything is off the table necessarily, other than the fact that this is not football related. That's the only thing that I am convinced of at this point, that Shedeur's slide is not based on what happens between the lines.
Yeah, and I think some people are pointing out, right, is the processing speed maybe where you want a right away starting quarterback to be? No, probably not.
No.
Right? There are certainly times where you watch and you go, yeah, okay, this probably should be more of an anticipatory throw that you're making, and you see that quite a bit. However, some of the players that we've seen go in the first and the top 50, okay, I don't know. There's a fine line for sure of like, this guy's a first rounder versus maybe, okay, this is an early day 2, something like that. And I know Dana's talking about not being as high on Shedeur, and yet still saying, expecting a day 2 pick out of him. Like, there's just no way you can convince me. Again, I don't even think this is really recency bias talking. I think this was a collective thoughts. There's just no way you can look at the 2022 class especially and go, hey, yeah. So if this is where it went. Okay, with Pickett and Willis and Ritter, you can't tell me that Shedeur isn't even at least on that level,
right?
And then again, when the Dillon Gabriel pick hits, the whole like credibility of like, well, yeah, it's on the field, it's gone, it's over. We're not getting there. And I know maybe he isn't great on the board, but if Milroe is. He's not been better on the field to this point. You can say all you want about the ceiling, right? The ceiling for Milroe is really great and awesome. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can say that there are any more than 3 quarterbacks better than Shedeur in the class, and I just don't know how you make that argument with Shuck either, to be very honest.
Yep.
That dude with pressure, he's just flinging the ball. Like we kept talking about the Stanford rep, Smitty, all night when Shuck got picked, where he's just the first sign of pressure. Just Will Levis, Carson Wentz that thing up in the air. What is that? Like, that's not like pressure. Like, he looks like he is soiling himself when pressure comes. So like, I just don't know. Once Dart went off the board, it was kind of like, okay, that's totally fine. Like, whatever. You like him a little bit more. Juice, you mentioned the pre-draft process was good. I think Mobile was a little shaky, but I think he, as you said, he went and did stuff, right? There are guys who who have in the past not gone and done stuff that it's like, we would have liked to see you there. And it's like, okay, maybe that's why you're right. Cause Levis didn't go, and he could have, right. 2 years ago, he didn't go. And that's something I think that you would put into account, but yeah, maybe NFL teams from the jump of like going to the Shrine and not doing anything, maybe started rubbing them the wrong way a little bit. And you go, okay, that you maybe put that in the big box of stuff there. But I just, again, as everybody's mentioned, and it's kind of beating the dead horse a little bit, like at some point, right, there's just no reason on a day like today with how he plays the position. I see it. Yeah. I see the comment, but there's just nothing that tells me, like, at some point, if you're not, a team that is still looking, is still actively searching for something. Like, I don't care if Cleveland at some point, Cleveland, when are you going to stop the charade? Oh yeah, Dillon Gabriel's going to be a starter for us now. Okay. You don't have to lie to you. I know you're not lying to yourself in that room. You're lying to us. But like, yeah, at some point, this is 100% a collusion thing. And again, if they're and the reports and all that are going to be very shaky because NFL teams, they keep it as close to the vest as possible, right? But they probably know between each other. about plenty of this. And so to say like, oh, well, Shedeur going in and saying he wants to pick his team, sure. If he's actually doing that, then yes, you can get that understanding of like some teams kind of going, yeah, that's a little bit brash and a little bit too much. But man, there are plenty of QBs who have gone above and beyond with the brash and arrogance at the position, right? And I know some of them are certainly more talented, but at some point, like as I think we've mentioned, right, the precision, the accuracy, especially down the field, intermediate, all this stuff is really quality out there. Where you go, okay, like if we can be a tick faster with this, like we can get there because mechanically, he's not out of sync like even the number 1 overall pick is at times.
Yeah.
Number 1 overall, Cam Ward can get way out of sync.
He gets lazy.
It's
lazy with his mechanics.
It is, and obviously the ability to change arm angles and all that is nice. But when you kind of start to lean towards it and lean back, and there's plenty of Jordan Love in there, believe me. But like, yeah, at some point you look at the player outside of everything and you go, yeah, this is at the very least, even if I'm not the biggest fan of him, this is still a day 2 quarterback prospect without question. And yet here we are, team going with a guy who, kid you not, on the screen when he gets picked, NFL Network, first 2 words, undersized experience. That's all they had for him to start the graphic. That's it?
They weren't ready.
No.
Like, know what Dylan Gabriel is.
Yes.
You absolutely know what he is.
Yes. Yes. And so, like, man, I don't know. It's just it's truly one of those things. And I know, Tyler, this is an excellent one. Shuck gonna retire.
This is what you were getting on the stream.
This is what we were doing earlier. Once we got there, of like, hey, maybe the Saints need to plan for the future after Tyler Shuck, and they'll take Shedeur. That type of thing.
Jokes are flying. They're letting the jokes fly, man.
Yeah,
I don't even think.
Seriously,
I'll say this. I don't even think the Saints are in on the collusion. I think they just don't know what they're doing. Okay, because
Cleveland, it's a fine line. New Orleans, I agree. Cleveland's a fine line where you're like, I don't know, man. Cleveland's certainly something. I mean,
Cleveland would have looked way better just not drafting a quarterback, in my opinion. And just
that's my thought process.
100%.
That's my thought process. Is that you decided, and on top of that, you moved off of Travis Hunter first and foremost. You moved off of him, right? So going into this draft, my thought process is with Deshaun Watson's contract still looming, being part of the overall salary cap figure. We're not prepared. We're not prepared to drop a rookie quarterback, take advantage of that rookie contract because we're just not good enough around him. So you prioritize just all right. Let's continue to add quality football players to surround whomever that quarterback eventually will be.
Yeah,
they get some additional draft capital. Okay, maybe at some point, 33, right? Maybe in the third, add a quarterback. Maybe. Don't have to. We can continue to stick to the script in terms of just adding surrounding talent. But to then select Dylan Gabriel, which, I don't anticipate Dylan Gabriel will start any games for the Browns.
You would think not, but
stranger things have happened, right? Stranger things have happened. But this has nothing to do with football. This has nothing to do with playing the quarterback.
We've definitely reached that point for sure.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Okay. Well, I'm glad we kind of got that, and the comments got some jokes to fire off. I know Steve Palazzolo tweeted maybe Tennessee would take Shedeur to be Cam Ward's backup. We really started to get off the rails. I mean, again, this was just like, how do we deal with stuff? We throw humor into, I guess, the best we can for sure. But it was something.
One final thought on this.
Sure.
Right. So at this point, like you said, Shedeur is, if drafted, is a backup. He's a backup, right? Mm-hmm. And you think about it a couple different ways. Do you want the quote unquote distraction from a backup? That's never, something that teams want. They don't want to lean into that, right? Mm-hmm. But on the other end of that spectrum, my thought process is there are quite a few teams in the league, most teams in the league, that if the starter goes down, season's done. Season's over. Pack it up, right? Let's get to the 2026 prospects, right?
Yeah.
There are a handful of teams that actually have a competent backup, and generally speaking, it's going to cost you anywhere from $8 to like $12 million annually, right?
Yeah.
I think Shedeur, in the right situation, right, and he's going to come in at a nice price point considering where we're at in the draft now, in the right situation, can keep you afloat. I think he can keep you afloat. You know what I'm saying? If your quarterback happens to get injured, happens to miss a half in this game or whatever the case may be. I think the game is violent. The game is physical. I know they tried to legislate as much contact out of the game as possible, especially for the quarterbacks. But at this point, to me, it's house money. If it doesn't work out, no big deal, right? At this point, so again, from my perspective, just from a football perspective, I bring him in. If I'm one of these teams that has like a big bridge quarterback type of situation, we don't know what Sam Darnold looks like outside of the confines of Minnesota, right? Geno going to Las Vegas, and again, that whole thing is very interesting to me because Shedeur has a relationship with Brady, like they speak regularly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where it's baffling at this point. But again, looking at it through the prism of him being a backup quarterback, right? You could do worse. You could do worse. So again, it gets back to my point. I don't think it's football related at all.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's at the very least the NFL has somehow created as much intrigue as there's ever been to start day 3 of an NFL draft.
Yes, they have.
There's at least that, I guess. At least that. I don't think we've ever
Pittsburgh's
seen
got
anything.
124. Pittsburgh's got 124.
I don't even want to go here because there are a lot of Packer fans, and I don't want thumbs down to be part of this. But like, we knew there was a chance that Green Bay would take QB at some point in this draft.
Malik Willis
has an expiring deal on the contract. I'm not saying they're going to take him, but like they do need QB. Probably they're probably gonna consider it. And like I don't know if Shedeur would be in consideration there or not, but
not every team. In fact, most teams don't need a starting quarterback, but just about every team needs a backup quarterback.
Quarterback. Yeah.
Well, Drew seems to be on
right now. If a football game was played tomorrow, my team starter is Mason Rudolph. So I mean,
right.
Yeah, and the Browns, who's their starter?
So
Flacco,
so I heard a
guess.
report about the Steelers. Read yesterday. I forget who it was, but they said there was a conversation between the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers, and the conversation was we need a decision 48 hours before the draft. And based on what's happening and what the Steelers have done, I think the decision's already in. They just haven't signed Aaron Rodgers. That's just my thought. I don't know if you saw
their owner was actually on the local radio today, basically saying like he feels like it's done, like they've gotten his decision or whatever, and they just have some things to work out. But yeah, but like this has been going on for so long, like, and it's Aaron Rodgers, so at any minute he could just decide to, start tripping out on mushrooms or whatever.
That doesn't sound like football.
Him. So like, yeah, until something's actually signed and he's there, I'm not going to believe that that's actually happening. But even so, like, okay, so you signed 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, and all of a sudden that takes you completely out of the QB conversation. Like, no, it shouldn't. Like,
no,
yeah.
Not at all.
That's why, like, I'm still saying I would be fine with him with Sanders. That is a 124. The only thing I'm still thinking about is Ayomanor is still on the board, and I would love him at 124.
Yes, we'll definitely get to some best players remaining for everybody. But here, I want to start here. I guess not start. We've already done the Shedeur bit, which
30 minutes in. I want to start here.
I want to start here. No. Everybody, I would love to go around and if we need to pull up, right, I can share the screen. We can get to the tracker if we want to pull up a few drafts. But if anybody's got like the biggest winner that jumps out to them, I know I have one. I'm going to let it go around though, because there's a few teams for sure that I actually have on the schedule if we don't get to them. But I feel like there are a few on here already that I imagine people are going to mention. But if anyone wants to start us off and they think they have a big winner.
I don't know how this happens, but the Dallas Cowboys, Ezra Ocru and Siobhan Revel, I really like that in the second and third round. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if somebody took Jerry Jones' phone or like what happened. I don't know if he was out on a yacht and said somebody else make the picks tonight. Not sure what was going on there, but I really like what they did tonight. You already had the Patriots in the title, so didn't feel the need to mention them. But the Cowboys would be the one for me to bring up.
Forgot they were in the title. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There was I forgot I put a team in there. That's right. I tipped my hand.
Dallas definitely has let the draft kind of come to them. I haven't seen one cutaway to the Cowboys war room, which is like something I've never seen before. Right? It seems like for whatever reason, it seems things are buttoned up there. So they've done a good job of letting the draft come to them, and I think they've nailed it. To your point, Smitty, I think the Chiefs have been phenomenal through this thing thus far.
Hang on. I'm trying to pull this up and see if everybody. There we go. Want to get Dallas on the side.
I was like, what just happened?
I didn't think it was going to take us everyone else off. That was weird. Anyway,
Booker, Azaraku, Siobhan Raval. Yeah. It couldn't have gone any better than that. I mean, obviously, folks will think, hey, we need that receiver, right? It's kind of CD Lamb or bust in the receiving room. But there were other areas of this roster that needed to be addressed. And, actually, when they made the Azaraku pick, obviously he comes at great value there, 44th overall. But it made me think about your response to one of our streams, Jake, when we were going through the permutations of drafting for Dallas, traded down, and we managed to get Jalen Walker. And the first thing you said is, I'm going to test those edges with the running game. That's the first thing that came to mind here with Ezeraku and Parsons, right? I know they're going to get after the passer, but can they hold up on a consistent basis? And it's been an eyesore for Dallas in recent years here in terms of their ability to stop the run. So that's my only nitpick, but I love the three players that they managed to get. It's
funny you mentioned that because, Smitty, I think there might have been something said pretty quickly after that Ezeraku pick, and I think I said just that about this is still a team you probably want to run to the perimeter on with these two guys, especially on the early downs when they're out there, trying as much as possible. And Ezeraku has the arm length right to try and contest that edge a little bit more. But I fear that they have consistently been a team who has been okay with some small ball type of thing with the front seven, right? They had Marquise Bell playing linebacker at 215. It's been that it's also that type of linebacker class as well, which was something that was brought up at least with us tonight. I don't know about you guys, but because obviously San Francisco drafts Nick Martin, who is 221. Going to be some interesting talks about where he's going to actually play.
Future safety.
When all is said and done. Yeah, I mean,
he's a Greenlaw replacement, man. He's a Greenlaw replacement. He is on the smaller side, but the level of violence, and like for instance, I'm going to say something, and this might make a few people's heads explode. I think he is substantially more physical than Carson Schlesinger. Schlesinger has 20 pounds on him, right? And moves as well as anybody in this class. But just in terms of physicality, and that's kind of a question mark I have in Cleveland, is that you got JOK already. Schlesinger has the frame to play the mic, but he doesn't play with the requisite physicality that I would expect from the mic. You know what I mean? So, but Nick Martin, on the other hand, he's going to make mistakes. But as Drew and I were talking about on our stream, they're going to be fast and they're going to be violent. He's going to be able to flow next to Fred Warner as the weak side linebacker, and I think he'll do well. I think he'll do well in San Francisco.
Yeah, the Schlesinger one, Drew in the comments saying that was a bit of a surprise, but felt justified. Again, the linebacker position is a difficult one to quickly translate to the league. There's a lot going on pre-snap. There's a lot of, if the offense motions or shifts or flips the play, you got to potentially get everybody, aligned and all that. And you got to communicate with not only guys in front of you, but guys next to you and maybe behind you. And there's so much going on that, Schlesinger is entering a situation that, isn't ideal, right? Not really a guy, like a true, like, I can guide you along this, this journey early in your career. Whereas Jihad Campbell, yes, he's relatively new to the position, but he aced it in a Fangio scheme, has Zach Bond, who's got a year under his belt that you can go and kind of lean on. So certainly, again, as the draft often is a situational a question for a lot of these guys. But yeah, Dallas was this day too, really liked it. And obviously the Booker pick, you can hate. I think a lot of people have hated on it, right? The athleticism is maybe the question, right, in terms of the testing. But like I've said this, and I think I've said this quite a bit, he is a guard. I've said this quite a bit of like when Dallas was at their peak, when they were ready to push the chips forward and be who they want to be, they had the O-line in place. And they went and got Dak and Zeke, and it was wraps. And we're contending now, and we're moving forward. It feels like as long as, again, Guyton pick pending, that now Tyler Smith, Booker, Tyler Guyton, 3 Tylers.
BB.
Yeah, and Cooper Beebe at center, right? We got, lots of Drews today, lots of Josephs. We also got 3 Tylers joining on the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. Great things come in 3. So I'm excited to see how that works. And Revel. Goodness, size and speed. Like,
yep.
If he hits off of the injury, man, a lot of teams gonna be looking real silly after that one. Anyone want to go another direction? And for the Packers fans in the comments, we will get there. Promise. We'll let everybody get to their teams at some point in this thing as we're moving along. We will definitely get there. I know some people are putting teams in the chat like Buffalo, Arizona. Lee Evergreen comment here. Ravens having studs fall to them. The grass is green. Sky is blue. The sun comes up. Those are the ones, right? Death taxes and the Baltimore Ravens getting value in the draft. Who could have seen that coming? Who could have seen it coming, folks? And Smitty, I know, is very displeased about that.
I hate them.
You know what's crazy about this draft is normally they trade down, pick up extra picks, and then the guys still fall to them. This one they just kind of just sat there, ate their dinner.
Yeah, well, they have like 45 draft picks like on day 3, so they don't need any extra capital. But
it's going to be, especially with all the D linemen still available.
Somebody mentioned Arizona. That's one of the more intriguing ones because obviously Walter Nolan in the first round, but then Will Johnson's health. Obviously, Will Johnson's health going to play a factor into that. It's more like a chronic thing, right? So I don't think it's something that they're worried about, like a re-injury risk or anything right away. It's just a question of how long is his career going to be. But, say you get, a contract and a half out of it, 6-year career or something like that. I don't know. Do you take that for the value that you got him at? I think that's the big question for me. Just assuming that you're getting the type of player we thought, just on like maybe a shorter career than we thought.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And then they added Jordan Birch, who's a power edge guy. And we talked about on our stream in terms of he was a 5-star guy, never really kind of turned the corner on that. But I think you kind of know what he is at this point, and that's okay, right? So the team I got is Carolina. I was trying to stay away from the Bucs.
I love that.
I guess we'll talk about it. But yeah, the Carolina, I thought they did a really good job. Since Juice took the Chiefs, the other low-hanging fruit, I think the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens are the low-hanging fruit. But yeah, so I always say this in the draft. So, you that first round pick, you understand the team making the pick, and they're starting to they have this what's the word I'm looking for? This easel with the sketch pad, and it looks like a stick figure with that first pick when you look at them going with T-Mac. And then in the second and third round, they go defense, because me and Juice was like, this team needs to go defense, not offense, defense. But I think for the rest of the draft will be defense, and I think the one piece they needed on offense, they got it in T-Mac, right? And it's coming together. The Mona Lisa is coming together. We're starting to see what that looks like with this team. Love Nick Scorton from Texas A&M. I love Purdue Nick Scorton, not necessarily Texas A&M Nick Scorton. Better production, a lighter Nick Scorton at Purdue. I wonder how Carolina's going to use him. I don't know if they're going to use him how Texas A&M did, or if they're going to use him how Purdue did, or maybe a combination of both. But he's a guy who can come off the edge. You just gotta let him loose. Gotta unleash him. Let him go. And then I love Princely. I don't know if you watch the pod. I was going back and forth with Princely and Mikael Williams. Obviously, Mikael went in the first round. Don't believe that. I thought Princey was a better player, but we can talk about that at another time. But I think he's also
No, this is a great time. This is a great time.
He's an outstanding pass rusher. I think he does a little too much at times, trying to make things happen. But I think if you hone him in, I think you've got a steal in these two players. And this was probably the worst defense in the league last year in the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
And so they need players at every single level. Listen,
they might have a little bit to
well,
say.
Yeah,
but
you might be right.
I do agree. They're on the bottom level. Not to interrupt.
When you pull up that roster and you start seeing names you never heard of, or names you just with no production, no stats, you know what I mean? It's just like, who are these guys, right?
I started 2 games with defensive tackle for them last year.
See what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Hopefully you got that vet minimum, you know. But yeah,
I actually really like what Carolina has done as well. I think there's a little bit of fool's gold though, right? And I'm not knocking it because, in my opinion, if you don't go defense here in the first, the one player that comes to mind is T-Mac, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're missing that number one, and I think we were talking about it last night. And 2 nights ago, the kind of the knock on him is that he doesn't always play to his size, but he does a great job of creating separation for a guy his size, right? He's a route runner, he's polished, and Bryce Young has a tendency to favor that type of receiver. He peppers that type of receiver with targets. So I think that's a great fit. The Scourton thing, the fact that there was that group of edges, right, just kind of sliding down the board, Scourton, Ezraku, we understand why Mike Green was, but just that level of talent sliding down the board on top of the corners, right? Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison, Trey Amos, like it was just fool's gold, and it just worked out perfectly where Carolina was able to bolster their defense, not only in the second round, but in the third round as well. So, yeah, they're off to a really good start here.
Yeah,
I got the Chiefs, man.
T-Max is a
I'm
stud.
sorry,
Really quick. No, you're good. You're totally fine. I know we want to keep moving through more teams, but yeah, I mean, Prince Capsaicin hitting it on the head. Like even if it's not a completely different skill set for the edge rushers, if they're the 3-4, I think with Evro is going to just, I think, allow them to pin the ears back. I know Drew in the comments was talking about hopefully it's Purdue version of Scourton. I think that's what you're going to get in this defense. Talk about say what you want about them, but the analytics nerds and talking about draft value and surplus value at positions like wide receiver, edge, that's pretty good. That's premium stuff throughout the first 2 days of this thing. And yeah, as much as, I think we're rooting for Leggett and I like the speed and size type of skill set. I love the idea of him having more space to operate and be the flanker rather than trying to be the X. I think McMillan gives you a little bit more in that department, though I think he has some things to work on. But certainly the routes for his size are nuts. And Bryce Young can do the down there somewhere throws if he wants to at some juncture during this season, right? And just go let him make a play, because he doesn't always just accept the fact that guys going to be draped on him and make plays. He's proactive at times, which is, I think, helpful, but he can also do it. The guy's just draped on his back and he's just making catches like it doesn't really bother him. So, Carolina's really good, but yeah, we can keep going. I know Dana was talking about the knee surgery, the osteochondral autograft thing for getting stuff from his knee to his other knee. I know we brought that up a little bit tonight as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some wild stuff, but if you get 6 years, if you
We're
get
here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah.
There we go.
I mean, Puka said he's retiring at 30. Will Johnson could do that. That's totally fine. I think if you get, again, 2 contracts would be, I think, excellent for Will Johnson, right? If you get 1.5, I think I'm still very in on that skill set in round 2. But I know here we go. I got you, Juice. I know you want to talk about this.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
and there've been several classes that I really like to this point. Several.
Yeah.
I actually am really intrigued with what the Chargers have done to this point as well as the Texans. They kind of went on the offensive heavy and a little bit of a departure for some of these other teams. But it was clear. We saw, everybody saw the Super Bowl. Kansas City got beat up on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Got beat up. Josh Simmons, a healthy Josh Simmons, is in squarely in the conversation for being the top tackle off the board in my mind, if he's healthy, right? So they're able to get him at the end of the first round, and I think they're uniquely prepared to deal with or give him the necessary time in order to get healthy, round into shape, and be set to go, right? So you address that first round, take care of business, and then you've had some roster attrition, okay? Chris Jones getting a little bit older, longer in the tooth. Omar Norman Lott and Ashton Gelati are exactly what the doctor ordered, right? You want to have, we're talking Spags, right? We want to have a nice, deep rotation up front. We want to be able to take advantage of certain matchups across the line of scrimmage. I don't like the Chiefs. I dislike the Chiefs very much.
Smitty, that sigh was great, by the way.
I have to give credit where it's due. I have to give credit where it's due because
I didn't even realize I actually let out a sound there. I thought it was in
you did.
Yeah,
it was great.
That's
exactly how everyone's feeling. It is.
It's exactly how everyone's feeling because this puts them right back in well, they haven't gone anywhere, don't get me wrong, but certainly the way they've started this class, they might put themselves back over the top because, again, you get that deep rotation up front. You're going to be playing with leads more often than not. Norman Lott is one of the better interior pass rushers already with that natural leverage he plays with. I love what Ashton Gelati can do when you reduce down on obvious passing situations. Oh, yeah. I think his best reps come when he plays from the interior. You know, they like to move Chris Jones around to find a good matchup. Karlaftis is a man. Like, they've just reloaded. They've reloaded. And then to finalize day two, they get aggressive and move up one of my favorite corners in the class, in Noel Williams, a guy who will generate offense for you because he gets his hands on the football consistently.
Yep.
Yeah. Right? You know, you lost Snead an off season ago. Didn't necessarily get the same level of play from some of the young guys that they've drafted over the last several seasons, opposite McDuffie. And now we got Noel Williams in the fold. Another one of those corners that I think slid maybe a little too far. It's hard to argue with this. Like, Headley was talking about it, the third member of our team. He said it, the rich got richer in this draft. You know, you think about Philly, you think about Baltimore, like the teams that are right there, the best, some of the best players just simply fell into their laps based on value and ultimately where they're being selected in the draft. So, yeah, the Chiefs, I hate to say it, the Chiefs aren't going anywhere. They weren't going anywhere anyway, but this is going to create a lot of consternation for AFC teams. It's going to.
The rich get richer, and I'm an advocate for eating the rich. So,
excellent.
You know what we haven't talked about though? First, well, I guess the Patriots. We haven't talked about that, and we put them in the title.
I was going to save them in there, but yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking like the inverse, right? Like, I want to get your guys' thoughts on Cincinnati's draft class up to this point.
Oh boy,
because it seems it's pretty puzzling to me.
Before we shift, really quick, the Noel thing hurt a lot. 2 picks before Green Bay was about to pick. That hurt. That hurt. That felt like Dominic Pooney last year when the Niners moved up 2 spots in front. That one hurt as well. This one also does. And I think Gelati, really quick, has been often forgotten about.
Yes.
In the edge group this class. I don't know why. Maybe just Louisville, out of sight, out of mind. And they're like, I watched Tyler Shuck play at Louisville. None of these Louisville guys could be good, huh? This is terrible stuff. I don't know what that, you know, what the reasoning is, but yeah, when it comes to unleashing some power and the pop, and you mentioned it, like when he reduces inside, he stuns some of these guards. Even at Notre Dame, he did it a few times, and those guys were locking up the Ohio State guys, walking their way to a title game because their O-line was stout, and Gelati is pushing them back into the lap of the QB. And yeah,
he's a good one.
It sucks.
He's a good one.
And the other thing is with Karlaftis and all these guys, they're big. They're not sacrificing anything with the run game. They're not going to with how big they are on the lines. And that's something I think, as I've kind of, hinted at and at least talked about quite a bit these first 2 days, you see who is going first at edge rusher, right? Carter's on a tier by himself, which is totally fine. But who went next? I know Walker has the kind of hybrid thing, so he's a little exempt as well. But the other two, Williams and Stewart, bigger, defend the run first because of where we're going, and because
the pendulum.
Yeah,
the pendulum has
pendulum
swung back.
swinging. So now we're going back to bigger guys on the edge, and I think that's and I think a lot of teams in the 20s wanted either of those guys to fall to them for sure. And so Gelati is still another one who kind of keeps his way towards that direction. We already talked about Birch in Arizona. He kind of tilts that way, especially if he's going to be on the edge. And so you see that, and it's got me thinking already about Ezraku and Green and all these smaller guys, and Pierce. Boy, Atlanta's got Pierce and Walker, man. You better not be playing both those guys wide every play, because you talk about running on Dallas. Look out. So you guys better Atlanta better have some awesome thing on how to get people to 3rd and 7, because if they get there, they will cook. But that, I think, is the big conversation as well that comes out of this, is like these bigger guys on the edge, you got to have them. And I think somehow, again, maybe with mixed results, but Green Bay stayed ahead of the curve on that pendulum swing a little bit, going Gary and getting Van Ness. And maybe they would have gotten Stewart if he fell there, of like, no, it doesn't matter, 3-4-4-3. We got to stay prepared for this, because this pendulum swing might happen. So
yeah. If you want to remain in that too high, then that lighter box is going to have to be able to hold up.
Yep.
It's gonna have to be able to hold up.
Yeah, it is. And that plays to the linebacker thing too. And I think the Browns with Schwess, I know when he gets contacted, he gets just absolutely obliterated out there, which is fair. But at least he's packing the weight on and maybe going to try to commit to be more physical. Because again, we're going to see on day 3 a lot of these linebackers at 220. Yeah. And Juice, to your point about Martin playing more physical, that's very, very important, and you have to, because you can't just run around. Even as you get further away from the ball at linebacker, at some point you're going to still have to fit the run, especially as you said, if you're in the too high. So it's certainly a strange linebacker class, and I know, Smitty, this is where you wanted to go for a quick. Are we shifting off winners potentially?
Well,
we'll see how this goes.
The thing is, Jake, like, how much you wanted to talk about the Patriots, I guess. I don't know if we should finish up there and then come back to the inverse of the winners.
No, I think this is totally fine.
Okay, all right.
I have no problem.
I get the Shamar Stewart thing really in the first round. We've talked about that, and if he can tap into the pass rush more, I think that pick could certainly pay off. That could be good value at 17. After that, the Demetrius Knight pick and Dylan Fairchild, I wanted opinions on this because I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that value.
You want to take a crack at this one, Drew? Because we're having the same issues, Smitty. We're having the same struggle.
Yes.
So I agree with you in terms of the Shamar Stewart pick. But we would have went guard for them, because you pay the receivers, you pay your quarterback, and you need to protect him. Starts there for that team. It's just how that works. They need defense, just like other teams need defense. But I understand the Shamar Stewart pick, but I think who was on the board at that point? Was it
Zabel?
Zabel was on the board. That's probably where
Jackson.
Yeah. And Jackson. That's pick one. Should have went there. Didn't go there. Decided to go Shamar Stewart. Fine. Yeah. Okay. We'll get our guard later. No problem. But then they followed it up. They compound the crime. Okay. You turned a misdemeanor into a felony by going with Demetrius Knight Jr. Okay.
That's perfect.
We're not fans of him.
They were already getting arrested, but then they assaulted the officer.
Correct. So the backup is showing up. You're face down on the ground. Hands are behind you. And, it is what it is. We're not fans of him. I know PFF pushed him. If you go to the PFF mock draft simulator, they were pushing him. If you didn't pick him, he was going to be there at the end to say, you should have picked him over.
On their board. It was nuts.
I know he has the physical traits that we call you can't teach, right? But
some point you gotta go class.
I need instinct. Like you can't just be running around and just. And I said this before. 2 positions you need instincts for me: safety and linebacker. If you don't have them, I don't care what you got. You got to have him, and he doesn't have that, right? So I don't know. Like that's not where I would have went.
I think
because of the physical traits.
Yeah, I think a healthy Logan Wilson was already covering up a lot of Jermaine Pratt and Akeem Davis Gaither. I cannot imagine what Logan Wilson is going to be, the water that he's going to be carrying now, and the weight that he's going to be pulling.
Shoulders are hurting.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard, especially like what was on the board for them still at that spot. I mean, we're talking about all these teams returning great value behind them. I mean, this is
it's crazy.
Awesome.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Zabel with your boy Scorton.
Yeah.
Zabel with Scorton would look real nice here.
Yeah.
It would look real nice here.
And Noel at 81.
And Noel. Yep.
Hey, listen. I'm not just picking on them because I'm a Steel. Like, I love seeing this.
No, this is
what I'm talking about right here. I need more of this from the Ravens.
No, this is the thing. You're mad at the Ravens. Be mad at these teams. They're letting the Ravens and the Eagles and the Chiefs do all these things because they're doing stuff like this.
Yeah, you're 100% correct.
I'm going to preach to the Bengals. Get more in the scouting staff, fellas. We got to get more in there. This thing isn't.
Listen, them and the Browns are the cheapest organizations known to man. So, we don't spend money.
And they took Knight and Gabriel on day 2. Yeah. Hey, that's where we're sitting.
Yep.
Oh man. See, this
Dana
putting this in. Yeah, and Dana putting this in. Pierce and Walker both listed at defensive end.
Shout out to getting Xavier Watts at 96 or 97, wherever they did tonight. But it ain't making up for that trade in for Pierce for me. But
no,
a little bit of a
they sold the farm. They sold the farm.
Yeah.
So Headley,
did they like him that much more than Ezra
Yes.
They liked him that much more.
They did.
To go get it, huh?
Had to, and I think Headley, our resident Falcons fan, broke it down this way. He said, "I think the Falcons were gearing up to select Pierce 15th overall. They just happened to look up with Walker being there.
Okay,
right? And this is a team that has struggled mightily to generate a consistent pass rush outside of Greedy Jarrett most recently, but generally speaking, they just have struggled to affect the passer. Terry Fontenot has been beat up quite a bit in terms of his inability to find guys who can affect the passer on a consistent basis. Again, I'm thinking they thought Pierce, or rather Headley was saying Pierce was their guy at 15. Fool's gold once again. Walker falls to him. Okay, you know what? Let's double up. I don't hate the double up. I just hate the price tag.
Yeah.
Right. You already had a dearth of selections here in this draft. You have quite a few needs. You got it. There's a pivot position that you need to get addressed. That's the heart. That's the brain of your offensive line. I know they've talked about adding a receiver. I think the secondary, of course, Xavier Watts goes a long way, but they need a corner opposite AJ Terrell. There was more work to be done here. So it kind of kneecaps you, and then you're now thinking about 2026. What do you do then, right? Now that you've given up some of that draft capital as well. So to me, you kind of rob Peter to pay Paul to a certain degree here. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm not upset at the double up because I think they were gearing up to select Pierce 15th overall.
It's funny we brought up a double up as a possibility. Juice on our mock.
We did
2 days ago. We brought up the possibility of having this happen, and turns out, I guess.
Lo and behold.
I mean, hey, when you need pass rush and you need it that bad, I mean, it's hard not to think about it.
Where was the move up from?
40.
It was like 40,
45. It's 45.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty significant. It's a pretty significant
I guess what I was trying to do was they obviously wouldn't have known the way that the run was going to happen and stuff. But you look at the edge players that would have been available to them without that trade up. I understand, like if they loved Pierce, they were going to do that. But it's I don't know.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. In fact, again, understanding there's desire to solve for their pass rush. I get it from that perspective. But you could have gone Walker, right? Okay, now we're getting a player that we didn't anticipate in Walker. We have him now. Great. Let's see how things play out, right? Okay, we don't have a ton of draft picks, so let's see how things play out. Okay, in this particular instance, Scourton is there. Cool. If not, you got guys like Benmo there. You got Trey Amos there. You got all these corners who are now sliding. So there is a bit of a, 2020, you know what I'm saying, after the fact here. But I agree with you. I agree with you that there's definitely some consternation in terms of the amount of draft capital they ultimately relinquished in order to get back into the first round. It was a lot.
They could be Minnesota level depleted next year. I haven't looked at what the 2026 picks look like, but it could look like that. And I know Drew in the comments saying if he's on the hot seat, he's feel like he got to make some moves. I mean, the pass rush,
Fontenot?
Yeah,
Should be.
Yeah.
But like on paper, right? When you think about like, hey, my team ended up with
Yes.
Walker, Pierce, and Watts, you feel pretty good about that. But
Absolutely.
when you start to peel the layers back of like how you arrive at this, it's a little shakier, I think.
It's not
Because
ideal.
I think the last time we've had this level of a move up for an edge rusher was when Washington came all the way up for Sweat way back in, 2019, I think. They made that big trade with the Colts. It might have been because this was like, we think 19, 20 spots. I think that might have even been like 22 spots.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like the closest thing I can remember to this happening. And I think it worked out okay. Right. But again, and Pierce has been obviously more productive than Sweat was in college, which is a nice plus there. But yeah, it's a major move up when you feel like, as we've all been saying, you got an edge rusher in, which, as Dana said, they're listing them both at defensive end. So clearly they think Walker should be playing on the edge, which I can't disagree with because, again, as a linebacker, it felt like a lot of the other linebackers just not seeing the field super well yet, not processing a lot of things very well yet, and just kind of being the blitzer and working to cross face and as an edge rusher and blitzing and being a part of stunts and all that, which was his best deployment. And it sounds like that's going to be the case. But it's more of a resources given up to get what you have type of thing versus a on paper, this is who we picked. Because again,
They have
paper,
their
it
own.
looks okay. It looks good. 3 top
They have
50
their own
players
2
for
through
sure.
7 right now.
Yeah.
That's it. And they're
They're
not
going
on
2 through
schedule to get
7.
any comp picks.
Okay.
However, you know what? Hey, maybe they'll get an extra 7th when they trade Kirk Cousins to Pittsburgh because we don't get Aaron Rodgers and we paid $10 million. God.
Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't go back on decisions though, right? He's going to sign.
Yeah, that's never happened before.
It's in stone. Don't worry about it. It's in pen. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
He's staring at a wall right now, tripping out, deciding what he's going to do.
I obviously was really excited about the advent of Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks playing together. That Jesse Bates, Xavier Watts combination could feed families too. And if
what
they
are we
hit,
doing?
if they hit at edge,
He said Malachi Starks. What do you want me to do? That's what he said. He said it.
If the Falcons hit at edge with those 2 ball hawks on the back end, that's significant. Get the ball back to Penix. That's
a problem. My thing is you just have to get to the 3rd and 8 anyway.
Correct.
Throw 9 people in the box to get to 3rd and 8, buddy.
Correct.
Just do whatever you got to do to get there. That's the goal for them. So, you mentioned Starks. I mean, I will say they kind of maybe phoned it in. 3rd round, perhaps. Miles Frazier, a player still on the board. Juice. I know you could.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Talk about him. We mentioned that of like, that was,
they did me a favor.
Yeah.
They did me a favor. They were like,
they
you know
had
what?
enough of breaking your heart a little bit.
We're doing this too much.
They took the foot off the gas pedal just slightly, not taking Amos, right? And then, kind of coasted.
Dude, if they would have taken Starks and Amos, and then I don't even know.
Humphrey goes in the slot. Good night.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Okay, so
have fun. It's over.
How could this have been the worst? Let's figure out just real quick for my own torture.
Okay.
How Starks, Amos, what could that other pick have been? You just said Frazier. Frazier was pretty bad.
Frazier, Swinson.
For me, I should say.
Iomanner.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't be here right now on this show. Yeah.
No.
Swinson's a good one, yeah. Who hasn't been picked? That's funny enough.
I mean, Starks and Amos would have been enough. I wouldn't have been on
Iomanner
right now. Yep, I'm gone. I'm not showing up.
Yeah,
but anyway.
I think the Emory Jones pick is interesting. He's listed as a tackle here, but I think he's going to play guard. We talked about it a little bit in terms of Falele and him acquitting himself admirably, but not necessarily playing at the level that they need. There were some opportunities, meat left on the bone in the run game, right? Falele is kind of heavy-footed, doesn't necessarily have, play with good leverage. And there were those reach blocks, and when he was climbing to the second level, he just can't do it. Just doesn't have the athleticism in order to do that. Emory Jones gives you a bit more athleticism. And again, I think his home will be guard. That being said, his teammate, Miles Frazier, is a better player in my mind, right? And frankly, going back to the Senior Bowl, they kind of rotated those two at guard and tackle, and Frazier had better reps at both positions compared to Emory Jones.
Yeah.
So I know Emory Jones is, highly touted prospect coming in, and he's been a starter since day one. But this last season in particular, he took a step back for me. He definitely took a step back for me. And I think his teammate Frazier is a better player. So I agree. They phoned it in just a little bit here in the third. But otherwise, the Ravens just kind of did what, the Ravens do.
Yeah. Yeah, Starks, Amos, Swinson would have been an absolute nightmare for everybody involved. It would have been incredible. But for some, it would not have been a good time.
Yep.
Now, Smitty, there's still some ball game left. Swinson hasn't been picked yet, so don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Got your boy David Walker.
Oh,
Iron Man are still out there too.
Yeah.
So.
Iron Man is still out there lurking.
Think about Monken getting Royals some touches in space too.
No.
I will not think about that. I will not. I want to hit here, and then we can all go, I think, through our teams. Obviously, we've gone through Dallas, Juice, of course, and we, I think that was a good discussion. I gotta go here.
Jake knows that your team, bro. Jake knows that your team, bro. Come on, man. It's okay, man. It's okay.
Come on, man.
Let it be.
That's a different conversation for a different day.
Sure. I gotta start here. This is, boy, you talk about overhauling offense in exactly the type of way I would want to see an offense overhaul. You could maybe nitpick Membu versus Campbell. I could hear that argument. I'd probably agree with you if you brought that up, but man, they were I mean, there was like, should they? Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm saying. No, I would have GM'd it if Membu was the guy, but this is
or healthy Josh Simmons.
Yeah, healthy Josh Simmons at 4 would have made this thing. Yep. It's just, we're full speed ahead. Welcome back. The dynasty is returning. The evil empire is back, right? Type of move. But even still, Henderson to create massive plays for you in the running game, be a part of the passing game as a receiver, be out there as a pass blocker when need be, but you still have, other options in that room. Maybe they'll take another guy, we'll see, to kind of ease the load on Henderson. But then you go get a perimeter receiver who I think has better reps on the perimeter than some of the guys who went before him. Smitty's already shaking his head. He wanted Williams.
I mean, that's my guy. Yeah, that's my
for
guy.
For sure. And the
disgusting.
release game, the explosiveness. I actually thought he was better. There's some reps better through contact for him than I was expecting. But again, stacking down the field, tracking the football over the shoulder. It just big play creativity for him. And Jared Wilson, maybe we're not talking about him enough. Athletic as all get out to come in. Yeah, there are a couple warts where, some guys with more power are going to get into the chest a little bit, but boy, at 95, I mean, even if Campbell doesn't stick at tackle for you, I think you could still take a swing somewhere on day 3, to get another developmental option in there because, again, Caden Wallace, Vidarian Lowe, we got to do something else. All right? We're not – I remember in my way too early mock going, maybe Caden Wallace can figure it out. No, that's it. I don't think it's happening. But man, they could kind of mail it in and I'd be okay as well with this. Like truly incredible stuff from them.
Well, New England last year, there's a couple teams every year in the league that I can't watch them. Can't. New England was one of them.
That's fair.
It's like watching paint dry when you talk about specifically on their offensive side. It was nice to see Drake May play, but just who's he throwing the ball to? Are they going to protect him? And it looks like, Grable's like, yeah, I've seen the same thing you've seen. We need to get our quarterback some weapons. We need to protect him. And he did that, right? With Will Campbell, with Jarrett Wilson, and with Henderson in terms of his pass protection. And you go out and you get him a weapon. Nothing's ever a sure thing, but I think Kyle Williams is a sure thing in terms of the receiver position and what he brings. And he makes things easier for his quarterback because he can create so much separation. So with his release package, probably the best in the country. This, I didn't expect complete offense, but they had a plan. They stuck to it, and they're saying, "Hey, we're going to get this offense right, maybe before we get the defense right." Because I don't think they're too far off on the defense. I mean, you probably need another pass rush on that other side, but offensively, we knew this is where they needed to go, and they're sticking to it.
4 picks away from Swinson if they want him.
Yeah, there you go.
So
there you go.
Might be able to finish it.
This was a bit of a clinic, to your point. This was a bit of a clinic in terms of, getting this roster situated for your young quarterback to ensure that he's in an environment conducive to having success. It's hard to get any better than this. And when they made the Henderson pick, I thought to myself, because of just the sheer depth at the running back position. But when you take a step back and you think about just the ability to score from anywhere on the field, whether you're handing it to him, whether you're throwing the screen pass to him, the fact that you can trust him in pass protection, that's all for your quarterback. All of that is associated with your quarterback, right? Most important position group, the offensive line. Jarrett Wilson, Will Campbell. Will Campbell is the first offensive lineman off the board here, right? Keep your quarterback upright. And then, as you guys mentioned, I think we're all fans of Kyle Williams. I think people kind of the consensus kind of aligned later in the process. But
caught up, yeah.
You go back a season with Cam Ward and Kyle Williams. It was downfield. It was vertical. This year, not so much, but you got to see the entire game, short to intermediate, right? Dealing with contact, and then of course the release package again, bar none in this class. So yeah. And I'm actually a little surprised because it's Vrabel. Right, you think about Vrabel, you think about the defensive mindedness of it all, and understanding, recognizing what this roster actually needed, particularly for your young quarterback. Definitely a clinic here.
Yeah, Prince, I'm with you. I was joyful. 1 pick away, thank goodness. We didn't have to go through that. I would have put out a cool video though, a little compilation of a tragedy in 3 acts. I think that people would have probably enjoyed though, if they had gotten to take him, but thankful that it didn't happen.
I have a question actually for Drew, because he mentioned he has a hard time watching some teams in the league. I wanted his thoughts on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense ever since 2019 season.
Nope. Can't do it. Nope. It's paint dry. Can't do it.
It's true.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other winners? Yeah. Anyone else have any other winners before we want to go to our teams? Smitty,
my team was a winner for sure.
Okay, so we go there.
So everyone that's been able to watch the content, those are the winners.
There we go. All right, we'll start there. We'll start here.
Yeah,
Jeez, man, come on. Come on, let them know.
Watching the draft, and I'm getting the picks in early, right? So I'm going. I think the guy's name is it Ari
Marov or something? Yeah,
Marov. Yeah. He had this one in early, and I was like, Mecca Buka. I was like, I don't know that I like that. Matthew Golden was still on the board.
Got that right. He was.
Yeah,
he was. He was still on the board. You know it.
Yeah, he was. And I'm like, because I know Jason Light, the GM for the Bucs, said, "Hey, listen, because if the receiver's there, there's a possibility that we'll take him." And he's usually good at like giving you little nuggets that end up being truthful at some point in the draft. And I know I had a feeling that we're going to go linebacker because of what they have already and what they like in their linebacker room. So it was either corner, possibly edge rusher, but he said they may not go edge rusher either because they like what they have, especially with Hassan Reddick over there. And so receiver was always a possibility. So I'm Mecca Buka. I was like, But when I think about what happened last year, when it turned into the K. Dotton show for like 5 straight games, they lost a couple games because they didn't have Godwin, didn't have Mike Evans. You're running out there no-name guys. You're running out there guys who were in the preseason who haven't seen a lick of nothing, right? And I just think they don't want to run into that position again. And then you go back-to-back corner, same thing. They were throwing guys out there at corner because everybody was injured, moving guys that were playing safety down to nickel, down to corner, and it just became this big thing because they had so many injuries. And I just think the Bucs are saying, hey, listen, we don't want to run into that again. So we're going to go get Emeka Buka, who they likened him to Chris Godwin, which I get. I don't think he's as physical as Chris Godwin, but I think he's a better mover than Chris Godwin. And then Benmo, obviously, I think that's the best. I'm gonna jump on board with Headley's the best man corner in this draft, period, bar none, assuming he's healthy. I think there's a relationship between him and Benmo's dad and Todd Bowles. They went to school together. And so I think there's a connection there. So I think the Bucs have an inside track on his injuries. I think that's why they went with him. And then Jacob Parrish, who's going to play the corner position. He's a smaller guy, but he's fast. He's physical, and he stays in that hip pocket. He's similar to Benmo, just not as big. So I love it, man. I think the Bucs hit a home run. I know a lot of Bucs fans didn't understand the wide receiver position, but if I take you back a couple weeks, you'll remember, because I think the Bucs would have been in the Super Bowl if they had Godwin the year they lost to the Rams. So, yeah.
A couple teams that I mean, I don't know if I would go as far to call them winners, maybe, but very intriguing classes thus far are the Chargers and the Texans. I think obviously year one, Harbaugh wanted to control the line of scrimmage, right? We need to get more physical in the trenches, trademark, you know what I'm saying? Games are won inside out, right? But if you watch that Chargers offense last year, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to sustain drives, to score points, to finish drives, right? There were times where their defense was right there, you know what I'm saying? Holding down Kansas City, whatever the case may be. And they just could not string together first downs. They could not actually finish drives by getting in the end zone. There were a lot of field goal attempts, right? So they started it off with Amari Hampton and a guy I like a lot in Trey Harris. I think his star has kind of diminished a little bit throughout this process. But when you're looking for those X receivers, right, there aren't a ton of them. I think Trey Harris kind of fits the bill there. And in the passing game, without really anything solidified last year, at least in terms of the tight end position, it was effectively Palmer and McConkey. And once Palmer got hurt, it was just Ladd McConkey, right? Quentin Johnson hasn't necessarily developed into the player that they had hoped, the previous regime had hoped. So getting Trey Harris and of course, Amari Hampton to kind of be your bell cow. I know there's some pushback in terms of the fact that they signed Najee Harris, but Hampton's a better player for me, easily. He's easily a better player. The question is, was that the right pick, right value? Again, I just think this Chargers team struggled too much on the offensive side of the ball. They were right there. They just couldn't, again, finish with those two players. And then you wrap it up with Jamari Caldwell, who unfortunately, Drew, won't get to necessarily one gap. I don't think it's going to happen, but very good player in his own right. And as you mentioned, he just kind of created opportunities for everyone else, right? You got our guy Derek Harmon in Pittsburgh. Love him, right? But Caldwell was kind of the linchpin in terms of creating opportunities for the rest of those players on that Oregon
making sure everybody was
defense.
one-on-one. Yeah,
absolutely.
Make sure everybody was one-on-one. Yeah,
absolutely. So I thought this was really intriguing. And then with Houston, they trade out of the first round. I think ultimately, if Ibuka falls to him, he's the pick, right? He comes off the board, and of course, Green Bay takes Golden. So they trade out of the first round.
Oh, yeah.
And they started off with Higgins. That kind of size, that production. Opposite Nico Collins. My thought process was, okay, maybe too much similarity between them, but then ultimately they get his teammate Jalen Noel.
Truly nuts.
Right? So I think you're ready to go. Stephon Diggs' experiment didn't necessarily work out. Of course, Tank Dell dealing with a really severe injury. You don't want to be in a situation where it's just Nico Collins and then some guys, some jacks, right? So Higgins, Noel, polished receivers, different body types can affect the game at every level. I think that was significant. Ursary is your long-term replacement for Tunsil. I think at that point, Ursary was the best tackle on the board, and you have a fairly significant gap tier break. So you nabbed him, and then you wrap things up with Jalen Smith, who's a quality corner in his own right. He's not going to be thrust into, heavy snaps. He'll get an opportunity to, play special teams, get his feet under him. But I think he's a pretty good player in his own right. So another draft class through 3 rounds that I thought was pretty intriguing here in Houston.
Yeah, I think there could be some intrigue on actually who ends up playing the slot because of some interesting matchups you can create here. Again, not saying that Jaden Higgins can't hang on the outside. but I do think he actually, to me, struggled with a little more stem contact than your Trey Harris's, than even his teammate, right? And even maybe Io Manor as well. I think him and Besh, even more than Besh, even, I think. So maybe you give him some free looks. You let Noel stretch the field from the Z, and you've got an X. And I think, Spitty, when we were kind of like, wow, they took both receivers, that seems kind of aggressive considering the O-line. Oh, they went Ursary. That's right. Okay. Yep. We're fine there. Okay.
Yeah.
Understandable. Now, they don't pick for a while into day 3. But, yeah, hard not to be excited. And by the way, Hutchinson's also there. That's hilarious. Hilarious stuff. 3 of them.
Iowa State.
3 of them.
I can see this team dipping into some of their 2026 capital to jump into the 5th or even the 4th round here, right? If there's a player that they really like, we talked about perhaps adding, to that interior pass rush here.
Plenty of guys.
I think that's a distinct possibility. I believe that this regime, this battery that they have in Houston, has done a really good job. Has done a really, really good job of filling this roster with quality football players. So I have a lot of faith in them, actually.
Yeah. Smitty, the direction's yours. Wherever you want to go. You want to go to your team? You want to go to...
Yeah, I guess we talked about my team. Only 2 players to talk about, but I mean, I love both the picks. I think when you start off with Derek Harmon, like I said, he's my 14th overall player in the class. Just loves his ability to 2-gap. The hands are super violent. Makes a ton of plays in the backfield. And I think there was still like quite a bit of meat left on the bone when you look at the missed tackle percentage. I think that he'll clean that up. And I think at the very least, just with his disruptive ability, he's going to create a lot of opportunities for other players. And I just look at the possibilities along that defensive line with what they could do, right? Like exit Larry Ogunjobi, who underproduced on his contract in Pittsburgh. And you obviously got Keanu Benton, who I feel like is a building block. Cam Hayward's still there, but obviously getting older. And I'm just curious to see how interchangeable those pieces are along the defensive line for them. And, the way that they're going to move those guys around. I think for as much as like internally in Pittsburgh, we talk about the coaching staff and being pretty uninspired by a lot of the ways that they filled out the coaching staff. Carl Dunbar, their defensive line coach, in my opinion, is one of the best in the business, and his ability to develop players. So I'm very excited about this match with Derek Harmon. And then the running back, Caleb Johnson, we kind of touched on him a little bit, maybe a little bit scheme specific, but I think like this is the type of scheme for him. I think, despite the long speed and everything that people talk about, I think he makes up for it with his vision. I think he's very creative. I think the instincts are great. I think his pacing as a runner is also, like top tier within this class as well. Just love the footwork and the way that he sets up his blocks and just understands spaces in the lanes that he has. And I think when you're talking about like the Steelers offensive line, the way that they're rebuilding it, obviously you got to be able to pass protect too, but in Arthur Smith's scheme, the way that they've built it with like the Zach Fraziers and Mason McCormick's, who showed some encouraging signs as a 4th round rookie last year. I think this is a perfect pairing. So I really like the direction they've gone with their first 2 picks, despite not addressing that quarterback position quite yet.
Yeah, I agree with Drew's comment right there. Perfect scheme fit, as you mentioned, Smitty. The thing I'm probably most excited about with respect to the Steelers team is that young offensive line, right?
Yeah.
When
right.
I mean, we have a tendency to think about the really stout defenses over the years, and then of course the killer bees at one point. But when Pittsburgh was competing, in the AFC on a consistent basis, they had one of the better offensive lines. What Le'Veon Bell ran behind was one of the better offensive lines.
The Castro, Villanueva, Foster.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. They had a couple different iterations of that. You go back to the Faneca days, you know what I'm saying? Like they've had a couple iterations of that. And I think from just a talent perspective, and it's a young group, it's a young collective as well. Really looking forward to those guys. Hopefully they can all stay healthy. But the Johnson,
that's another thing. I feel like you could almost include Faetanu as a rookie in this class. Like didn't get to see him at all last year, who I loved. I mean,
big fan of him. Big fan of him. And then you gotta associate DK Metcalf with it, right?
Yeah,
he's part of the class effectively, right? So my question is, what do you do with Pickens?
There's a lot of chatter. I thought
Green Bay can't. We're not interested over here. Not interested.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter about that in Pittsburgh, like over the last week. It's interesting because like the conversation the entire time, it's gone like, okay, DK's acquired, and I think everybody was like, okay, that's the end of George. But from everybody that I talked to was like, no, like they don't want. They spent a year trying to find another receiver to play next to him. That's not going to happen. But I just felt like the writing was on the wall. If you're bringing in an external addition in at that same position and giving them a new contract when George is contract eligible, to me, the writing's on the wall there that they didn't feel comfortable enough to hand him the big money for non-football reasons. I think in an ideal world for them, they're able to effectively use him this year as like their own rental, basically, and get him like at least keep him under wraps enough to get him through the season. And then at that point, probably go separate ways. At this point, I think that's got to be the route they go, just because if you were going to trade him, I think you would have needed 25 capital. Like, if it gets ugly this summer and then you're trading him, how are you replacing him? You can't. You're asking somebody to you don't have the ability to go out there at that point in free agency, bring somebody off the street and replace that player. So I think if they were going to trade him, it would have had to have happened over the course of the last 2 days.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't mean he's not going to make it ugly this summer. I have no idea what to think.
True.
I just think from their perspective, they would have had to have done it.
You need Shedeur to wrangle him. That's what you need.
There you go.
You need Shedeur to wrangle him. The battery of Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is.
What are you circling there?
Pick 123. Said you need Shedeur. Here it is.
Oh. I thought that was the receiver to replace.
Well, it could,
I mean, Ayomanor?
I mean,
Jalen Royals.
Yeah, you could maybe do both. You might be able to do both. You never know. I don't know. I don't. Not to bring it full circle, but we no idea what the NFL has in store for us collusion wise tomorrow. Who can say? Who can say about that? So
of course we do. Of course we do.
Well,
I saw somebody ask a question.
I can't say we actually know. Yeah,
I think I saw a question up there directed at me.
Yes,
Aiden.
Yep, I started for you. Yep.
Zachary, out of I'm part of this. Out of Zachary, Kahn, and Tomlin, who voted on getting Sanders or not. No, he meant to say Rooney. He corrected it in the next thing. I mean,
okay.
If you go back to their last quarterback decision in the first round, 2022, that was one of the rare instances where Rooney actually like flexed his ownership power and said, "We're taking this guy. We're not passing on another great Pittsburgh quarterback like my family did in the past, like Dan Marino in '83." So that is a time where Rooney uncharacteristically decided the decision that his franchise was going to go. He typically has that out of his hands. Andy Weidel builds the draft board. Kahn and Tomlin obviously involved. And Tomlin really has to, I would say, he's the guy in terms of the way that this elder was done in terms of the draft. Going back specifically to Sanders, like I said before, I know they all liked him. I don't think that anybody loved him. And when you're talking about that position, you got to have pretty strong conviction, in my opinion, to pull the trigger on it.
Makes sense.
Now,
Makes sense.
From everything that I've heard, Tomlin did love him some Jalen Milroe, but that didn't come to fruition, obviously.
I guess not. I mean, Caleb must have been too enticing, right? Like, had to be. It was kind of Caleb was maybe just like a
I don't think they thought he would be there.
How is he here? Yeah, it's just kind of like kind of like Atlanta with Jalen Walker.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, wow, we can't turn away a gift like this as much as we need QB,
and,
especially if Rodgers coming in. And I know that they don't have
a
long-term solution, but like that's we got Rodgers coming in.
I would say going back to the Aaron Rodgers
good.
conversation, I know that like both parties have said it's not playing a role. But if they would have drafted a quarterback over the course of the first 2 nights, does that change from Aaron's side, how he would have felt about it?
I don't think Aaron, reacts to quarterback picks, emotionally or anything. That this doesn't seem like him. It doesn't seem like him. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it would.
And I know you're not talking about that could have been a first round, but even at 83, I'm curious as to how different things would have been.
Yeah,
I don't know,
because I think there is.
That's of course entirely hypothetical. So
there is certainly, I think, even an indication if you take him
like
we would like him to start at some point, right? That to me feels, and I think we kind of had this conversation at the top of like once it gets into day 3, there's no expectation other than the backup, and maybe that's where Aaron feels most comfortable. Of like, you can take one. I know they're a backup; they're not threatening me, right? In terms of.
I feel like he could have even been comfortable with Milroe because Milroe, I feel like is sitting a year,
for sure.
If they draft somebody like Shedeur, I feel like it's a different conversation.
There is more of a closer to starting type of thing. All right, I can round this out really quick.
Real quick, I wanted to mention Drew's comment here about Aaron Rodgers, George Pickens, DK Metcalf. Literally, I would love to hear about the locker room conversations if that ends up coming to fruition. And somebody mentioned too, like with the way the Packers went through the draft, and I know you're about to talk about it. Man, do they need to bounce back and stay healthy from Jair? But when that was like a conversation with like, is he available? There were Steelers fans that were like, hey, bring him in. Imagine adding that personality to everything too.
Well,
this training camp battles would have been something. But go ahead.
It would have. So I know a lot of Packers fans were in here to start the show. Hopefully that some of them hung around for this. A lot of people saying some polarizing stuff here. Loathing the Belton pick, loving Savion. Wow. Right, everybody loves those receivers. Of course, Packers could have a top 10 receiving core now, maybe top 5 by year's end when Watson is back. I mean, I would love to see Golden and Watson get to play together at some point. My confidence in that has now waned a little bit more with Savion joining this team, which hurts a little bit because I think Watson took a big step forward in year 3 in terms of just like understanding more about, and I've obviously brought this up plenty with receiver position, but like figuring out how to handle contact further into the stem and making yourself more available deep down the field. And he dropped 6 less passes than the next closest guy this past year. It was just like everything just clicks. And of course, unfortunately, an essentially meaningless football game that it turns out, because Washington comes back and gets it done, you tear your ACL. Mm-hmm. Now, Green Bay obviously went 2 receivers, 22-23. Actually, 3 and 2, or 3 and 3. Actually, yeah. It was Dobbs, Watson, Toure, and then it was Reed, Wicks, and Dubose. They're getting 2 more. Will they take a third? I have no idea. But boy, do I want to find out, right? I can't wait to see what happens. Savion over Torrey Horton and Iomanner and even Royals, to me, who I'm not the biggest fan of Royals, that seemed a bit shocking to me, which I think tells me we're going to put the Mickey Mouse stuff in the hands of Savion Williams and let Reed not do that anymore. Run the big boy routes. Say this is just an aberration 1 year of the drops, and we'll go. And we got this going into next season. Now, Savion's probably going to be a part of the deep passing game because he's got the speed and the size. And I think Golden, I know some people are talking about X versus Z, blah, blah, blah. I think he can be the X. He is not deterring me at 191 when I'm watching guys like Garrett Wilson at 183 and Ladd at 186 doing X receiver stuff, and even Olave a little bit when he's healthy at 187. It's not going to deter me from that. Now, I think having Dobbs and Wicks do some of that stuff kind of eases that transition to the league a little bit where he can play more flanker, and the 4-2-9 is still going to kind of make coordinators think a little bit more about that. Make them think more about it. Even if you don't play to it, it still makes them, oh no, he ran a 4-2. We must look out for that. But he runs some of the best routes I've ever seen a 4-2 receiver run, period. Maybe best ever. I don't know. I'm trying to think of all the 4-2 guys in the history of this game. But Belton's was weird. It's a weird pick. I think everyone would probably agree there, especially with Amos.
Why is it weird?
With Amos
I'm trying
there.
to understand.
With Amos there.
Okay,
I think with the players that you look at of like edge and defensive tackle now, I think it was a very shrewd move considering only 3 defensive tackles, I believe, went after we made the turn to round 3. So there will be options, right? Jordan Phillips is only 20, right now. I think he's maybe close to 21. He might be that by like May or June. CJ West, Peebles.
Oh my God, no one took CJ West.
Yeah, nobody took West. It was a very shallow 3rd round with Joshua Farmer still available too.
Yeah.
And so they might have not played this pretty nicely. Now edge is maybe the question, but I think there were a lot of people, including myself, saying, yeah, they might not do it because they believe in Van Ness and they believe in like the rotation behind him to create more as Van Ness enters that pivotal year 3. The Belton thing makes more sense when you think about right guard's not solved. They haven't solved right guard. There's no, and it didn't dawn on me because I was like, why? I was distraught, people, about not picking Amos. Okay, I was distraught. A player I would have been jumping out of the seat for at 23. They don't pick him at 54, but they got bigger. Aaron Banks, left guard. They're moving a bigger guy to center than they had there previously, and now at right guard potentially is Belton to do kind of what the Rams did last year. It didn't quite work because they obviously one of those guys is let go, but with Jackson, Dotson, Avila, no, we're getting vertical too. We're going to run more gap stuff. They already had made that sort of switch to more of the hybrid run scheme with Jacobs coming in. So Belton sliding in at right guard, I think there's a real good chance we get that. And then it's Sheed versus Jordan Morgan. You know, it maybe come back for extension versus not, and you maybe hand the keys over to him. Mm-hmm. So no defense. It hurts for sure. I just don't think, again, in this edge class, even if they wanted one, right, some of their fits, if you look at it, right, in I'm sorry I'm long-winded, fellas. I'll let you definitely chime in here, but the fits, right, Michael, Shamar, JTT, they didn't even have a chance to pick JTT at all. Scorton goes, I think, just a few picks before they were on the clock, which was like kind of teetering in the, is he going to, because I think Scorton wants to play the 3-4 outside linebacker. Unfortunately, Birch, Arizona, takes him right in front. And I know Drew put this in the comments of like Green Bay going to Oregon Pro Day. They haven't gotten anybody from Oregon. I'm pretty sure they were taking Harmon if he was available at 23. Just so happens Pittsburgh said, well, we'll take that from you there. And I think Arizona did the same thing. But their guy's still available. Ahmed Hassanin is like 270. Just learning the position, right? Perfect guy to sit behind a couple guys who have played a lot of reps. So, and a lot of DT still on the board. The Noel snipe hurt. No question. No question about that. Amos and Noel were my guys coming in, but I see the vision here a little bit more after sitting with it.
The only thing that I was going to say, sticking with like the cornerbacks, you're talking about Noel, the Savion pick. One pick later, the Jaguars took Caleb Bransaw, and I thought that would have been a potential direction.
That also hurt.
Yeah.
Yes. I think he could have honestly pushed Bullard a lot at the nickel spot. And maybe you feel like you can do some boundary stuff and you can move Hobbs in and out and all that stuff. But I think at this juncture, Jaw's coming back. Period. He's coming back.
Yeah.
He's coming back.
Like.
And we've been playing the snip, snap all off season about which direction are we going here. Very much like a kind of like a Rodgers playing or not. You know, are we going to trade him or not? Nonsense. But he's got to come back now. No questions.
Yeah, I mean, back to back, you pass on Trey for Belton, and then you pass on Ransom.
Thank you. Yep. It's still fresh in the mind here. Okay.
Hey, pull up the Malachi Starks thing again.
That's fair.
I can keep going.
That's fair. That's fair.
You mentioned trying to find an edge that represents some more size, right? Legitimate, guy there on the edge. You don't want to stand this particular guy up, right? You want his hand in the ground, and I think again he's one of those individuals that are true 4-3 edges that have their best pass rush reps when they reduce down. Jared Ivey, I think from a athleticism perspective, there's he leaves something to be desired, but those heavy hands, the number of games that Ole Miss did up front, the way he holds up at the point of attack against the run, and again, he's the type that you can reduce down and give you some juice from the interior on the defensive line in terms of the pass rush. So he's a name that I would consider. Yeah. But yes, you're right. In terms of the defensive tackles, there's a lot of names. You didn't even mention Deion Walker. And I can understand why you may not, but just from a raw talent perspective,
for sure.
Walker is a day 2 prospect. The injury, the back, the motor, those are the question marks there. But just again, pure talent, day 2 player in this class. So I think from that perspective, you'll be all right. Again, if you're sticking with Jair, you're in decent shape. I think Quincy Riley's still available. He's a corner I like. Kobe Bryant's another one that I like. He may not necessarily fit the measurables per se, but a couple guys that I like from that perspective. There you go.
Give that man some Culvers, and we're good.
And then, but I wanted to unpack the Anthony Belton pick a little bit more. I think we mentioned it earlier. It was Ursery and then a tier break.
Yeah.
And then the next guy for me was Belton. I wasn't anticipating him necessarily playing in the inside, though. So you're thinking he's going to line up at right guard or be part of that conversation. I was thinking more along the lines of, because you know how I feel about Jordan Morgan. I think Jordan Morgan is more guard than tackle.
Yeah.
I was thinking perhaps Belton is the long-term answer. You got Tom and
possible.
Walker, right? In the last years of their respective deals, we assume
Very
Tom
possible.
will get the big money and Walker will test the market. Then you can slide in Belton. That was kind of my thought process. But if you're looking for a guard, you know who I like. I like Miles Frazier. That's who I like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
I think he's to me he's on the short list in terms of the best prospects available here going into day 3.
Perfect transition. I did want to hit one more team. I know we're getting late. All three of you are on the East Coast, so I know that is, we're pushing a little later. But yeah, I think it can go either way, because I think again, I brought it up of like Connerly, Simmons, guys that maybe they would consider at 23 because of the long-term issue of trying to pay Dobbs, Watson, Tom, Walker, all from the same class. And that's a very, very good point. I'm wondering if, again, they're looking for, because this is what they do, right? When they want guards, what do? They take tackles, who they then kick inside, right? So they don't really draft true guards very often, right?
Sure.
Morgan was a tackle. Ryan, you could maybe say blurred the lines a little bit, but he did a lot of right tackle stuff at UCLA.
Yep.
So, and again, I'm not saying you're incorrect. It could honestly be both. It could be, hey, let's see what you got at right guard this year. Maybe give us a best 5 situation because you're big and physical and you can get downhill and create vertical, displacement in the run game. And then also we like the foot speed. Can we trim the weight a little bit when you then maybe move out to left tackle where you're more comfortable in 26?
Right.
I don't think that's impossible, because I think when we were doing the mock juice, we kind of talked about that with Simmons of like, hey, want to just kick inside for us once and then kick back out. So it could be a very fluid situation, because they have the good news is they have a lot of offensive linemen who have experience starting games. Now Ryan hasn't played well, but Jordan Morgan they're hoping for as a first round pick. So I like that they're in this kind of situation, because it means they've got a lot of bodies at the O-line. And I think
Good
tomorrow,
to
tomorrow if they go after a guy who I know there's heavy interest in Asa Pole from Washington State, that would also tell me that I think they're just gonna throw resources at maybe fixing right guard, but also are looking at that long-term left tackle situation. One more name to throw out, Elijah Roberts. They met with him. He was 290 on the edge. Maybe you're reducing inside to play some defensive tackle as well. Anyone else on Green Bay, Drew, if you want to chime in, or Smitty as well on anything Green Bay?
The only thing I could say was the Savion pick. That's probably the pick that I'm not a fan of for you guys. Is a super raw receiver. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's extremely dangerous. But I think it was a little unnecessary. Let me just say it that way. Could have went in a different direction, but you kind of explained in terms of Reed no longer getting those types of balls and giving that off to Savion. So I guess maybe that's the plan. If that's the plan, I'm good with it.
Hey,
Both the Drews are on the same
Drews gotta
page.
stick together, man.
Yeah, they're on the same page. I mean, it's very hard for me to justify it with Horton, Isle Manor, Royals all still available. You're kind of sitting there. But again, size and speed that maybe not all of them quite have. I think Isle Manor's got the ability to win down the field, but again, maybe they thought it was too redundant.
I think to your point, Watson is out, coming off the injury. I know he turned that corner, but you mentioned it. Williams can kind of take some of that the gadget type of touches, right, and then you can send him vertical because of that size, speed, ability, and that kind of fills that role from Watson. Exactly.
Yeah, he can win above the rim.
So
that's a red zone potential. Like, hey, we've got someone. Yeah, it's true. It's true. One team I know before we maybe get to just a couple best players available before I know we kind of get out of here and everybody can get some rest before another long day. Washington. Because
is it because they got Trey Amos?
Well, yes, but I love me some Trey Amos. But I think when you look at this from the perspective of, a year ago, sitting here. They were like, well, we hope we're going to take a step forward, right? We hope that this is the draft that can kind of get us to leap back to where we need to. You hit on the QB, boom, we're off and running. We're making moves at the trade deadline. Things are moving at a million miles an hour for them. Then they go get Tunsil. Then they go get Debo. Maybe in the wrong order. Either way. They go get pieces like that to bring in. And then you also grab two positions of high importance and some sort of need with Connerly and Amos. Maybe Connerly's playing right tackle. And Amos, man, it allows Sainer still to go back to where he's been most successful.
Yep.
Man,
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't ask for much more from what these guys have been up to. And maybe, again, they were concerned by the Simmons injury, which I think, again, very fair considering what it is. If it was ACL, I think there would have been less concern across the league. But it's a different injury than the ACL now. And so, again, movement skills are off the charts. You love these guys with the movement skills where you maybe can fix the hand technique. Because, man, this guy loves to bear hug some guys. There's no question. But the movement skills are very impressive. So
got to get that functional strength together. It'll
Yeah.
probably take a year for him to get there. So, but yeah.
And I know Drew putting in when Connerly got run over Green, they were working on the jump sets. That's what they were working on with the tackles when that happened. And again, when you don't shoot the hands when you do that,
Goodbye.
that's kind of what happens because the next rep they go at it again.
Migraine ends up in your chest.
Yeah, and which is not a thing you want. But the next rep, I think he mirrored him pretty well. Green tried to win inside, and you saw the movement skills pop up.
The movement skills are insane.
And
they're insane, dude. Yeah.
And he was brought up as by the defense of voted on best O-line on that team all week, and still notable.
Yep.
So, and to Amos really quick, I know anybody can throw in a quick blurb on Amos, but the battle tested in a lot of stuff coverage wise, lot of stuff. When you go to the Saban school of playing DB, and you come out the other side, I think. I think
he's seen it all.
Teams know you're ready. Yeah. And
he's seen it all.
He shows you that he's seen it all as well, which is the other, I think, important part and why I have him personally at corner 2 in this draft, because I think it just everything seems to click in terms of peeling off routes to see, he feels like some of the times the vision is just maybe he's got more than us. I don't know. The eyes are further back on the head sometimes of man, how does he see this? This is insane. So yeah, really impressed with that. Even if they don't get everything out of Lattimore that they hoped in the trade, which it hasn't been great so far, that it looks like they got their guy coming in. So anyone else on a team, or anyone want to hit a quick couple of prospects they're interested in seeing? Go tomorrow or best players available. You can kind of take it in any direction. We can go around the horn one more time if everybody's getting late. Even though I'd be thrilled. I'd love to talk 3 more hours, go through every team, truly. But I know.
You're nuts.
That it's getting late. So
I'm not saying he's the best player available, but you know how I feel about Kobe Bryant. I love me some dogs. I love the mentality that he plays with. There's also just some boomer bust guys like Zy Alexander out of LSU, who I'm a really big fan of. At the wide receiver position, Nick Nash, I think, is one of the more polarizing guys within the draft community in terms of what he could be. I think there's a lot of boomer bust to his game as well. So, best players available, obviously, that's I feel going to be pretty consensus. We could go back to the Shedeur Sanders conversation, I guess. Aomanor's still there, Swinson's still there. Obviously, I just remembered during the conversation we had that CJ West was still on the board, who's one of my guys. Another one of my guys, Bishal Tootin, I'm curious to see where he's going to land as well.
A lot of running backs.
Definitely a lot of backs. Lot of backs.
I got Chris Paul.
Oh, perfect.
Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss is a guy I'm looking for in target. Looking for in target to see where he ends up. Let me see. Kyle Kennard and David Walker. David Walker in particular on that edge. And the tackle, you just talked about Deion Walker, CJ West, Jameer Caldwell. He didn't go yet, did he?
He did, Jeff.
Caldwell, the Chargers got him.
That's right. He did. That's correct. Yeah. And then obviously Shedeur, and then I'm going to throw out there Kyle McCord. That's who I would have taken over both Shuck and Gabriel, but that's just me.
I don't think it's just you, Gabriel.
No, I mean Will Howard as well. I mean, I would have taken him over Gabriel.
Yeah, I agree there. I you mentioned the depth that remains at running back. Really, really intriguing prospects. I love Damian Martinez. Love Damian Martinez game. Jaden Blue, also that explosiveness and what he does in the passing game to kind of polish everything off. I'm even a Brashard Smith guy as well. I've mentioned several times Miles Frazier. I think he might be one of the top 3 or 4 players remaining in this class. Shedeur, obviously, but we've waxed with respect to that whole situation ad nauseum. Quincy Riley, man.
Yes.
Quincy Riley is another player that I think, you mentioned Kobe Bryant. We're at that point now where I would have been perfectly fine with him at the end of day 2. Mm-hmm. Now he's coming at a value here on day 3. So definitely like him. Billy Bowman. Again, the amount of football that he's seen, and the fact that set aside the one-on-one, set aside the Senior Bowl one-on-ones, the guy is always making plays, right? Even as Oklahoma has had their struggles, Billy Bowman seemingly has always made plays. His teammate at linebacker as well. Another one that Stutzman, I think, maybe the star has diminished a little bit, but good football player. And then we talked about the defensive tackles. One name that we didn't necessarily mention, Ty Robinson. I like Ty Robinson a lot. He's really grown on me throughout this process. And then Drew's guy from Florida. I think he'll probably be a 6th or 7th rounder. But what's his name, Drew? Help me out.
The linebacker or the corner?
The D tackle.
You got me thinking. Cam Jackson.
Which one?
Cam Jackson.
Okay.
Cam Jackson.
Well, I was just saying, are we talking about the 460 pound?
Desmond.
No, not Desmond. Cam Jackson, I think, again, we've talked about it several times as far as kind of the pendulum swinging back to teams running more gap schemes, right? Teams getting downhill, punching people in the mouth, being physical at the point of attack. You got these lighter boxes, these smaller linebackers designed to play a passing game. Cam Jackson is one of those players that, isn't going to give you a ton as far as pass rush is concerned, but it'll be a good part of your defensive line rotation. First and second, it's just hard to move him. Just hard to move him. He may not necessarily be, in the backfield, super disruptive, but he allows everybody else to make plays. So a lot of good football players still available.
Last one I forgot too was JJ Pegues out of Ole Miss.
Oh yeah.
Pegues is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lee's asking about blocking tight ends.
Oh yeah.
There's quite a few.
Yeah.
Quite a few. Fedone has had some excellent reps as an inline player from Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Hawes from Georgia Tech is another good one. Yep. Can't wait to see where Gadsden's going to end up.
Yeah,
that's not a blocking tight end.
Stool. Not a blocking tight end necessarily, but I like Brenning Stool quite a bit as well. So, yeah.
As it relates to tight ends, Gunnar Helm didn't go, huh?
No, he didn't.
Neither. Yep.
I'm going to go to bat for a couple guys. One of them is probably, again, Smitty knows this. I probably rank him among the highest, I think, that I've heard of at the running back position, and that's Cam Scatterbo. Some of the best some of the best through contact skill set, and just doing a variety of things with that in terms of body control that is so good. And I think he accelerates better than given credit for. He catches the ball better than given credit for sure. Got my guy running a streak down the sideline, pushing off like a savvy vetted receiver, making a play against Texas. Like, I know he ran slow, but he's built for this pendulum swing, and it was unfortunate that he didn't go tonight. But this might be where the shock and awe comes in. He's my RB3, and then to see him not go definitely hurts.
Is there supposed to be a number in front of that 3?
You would think so. You would think so. You would think so. Be kind of sick if New England just said, "Yeah, no, let's get Thunder and Lightning going." In the run game, but we'll obviously get to hash that out tomorrow. Braden Swinson is somebody we talked about quite a bit already tonight. Of like, yeah, let's definitely see where he lands in terms of the pass rush skill set. Couple of Jalen Reed, Penn State safety.
Yeah.
Excited to see where he ends up tomorrow. And then even further down the safety board, Keaton Crawford from Nevada, somebody who was mentioned to me about 6-ish weeks ago, and I took a peek, and I am very impressed what I've seen from him coming from kind of the mid-major schools. And of course, at receiver, Andrew Armstrong. I know the more athletic Arkansas receiver went tonight. That's totally fair.
But Armstrong's the better player. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. But I think
we probably should have talked about that in terms when we were going through with every team, that Detroit trade up for him.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Head scratcher. Head scratcher. Yeah.
Because where's he playing? He playing Z receiver then?
I have no idea.
How are they making that work?
I don't know.
I guess we're gonna find out. It's gonna be fascinating.
We'll find out, apparently.
That was a strange one. But yeah, I'm very in on Armstrong as a boundary player. And I think Green Bay, you don't have to get crazy. We don't need to do it again. But if you're jonesing for it,
good things come in threes, as you said.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, it's clearly so. Boy, they're gonna have to make some trades if they do that. But I do think if there are teams that are looking for it, I know Smitty, the Steelers are. If Horton, Royals, and Islemanor go off very quickly tomorrow, or I guess today.
In just a few hours.
A few hours here, but if they're looking down the board for one, that
I honestly a name that I know that they like a lot is Ricky White.
Yeah,
it's another one.
That's
another one.
Ricky's been good. Yeah. So, yeah, and Lee's on board, I think, with everyone here in terms of the Armstrong hype as well. I will
just a little old. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Happens. Darius Alexander went tonight. He'll be 25 very soon. We're here for good time, as someone brought up earlier as well. So, and Keandre Lambert-Smith's got some pretty good suddenness as well at the receiver position. Thought he helped himself at Auburn. Excited to see if he gets picked tomorrow. Any final parting thoughts from anybody on today, tomorrow, anything like that? I know that was a good call by Smitty to bring up that Detroit trade that we kind of didn't talk about. But
Shedeur watch continues.
Yeah, for sure. Why not bring him full circle?
Another player I'm interested to see where he falls. Not talked about a lot. Kanata Mumpfield out of Pitt.
Yes,
I'm a fan.
Yes,
I think he's super smooth.
Yes, completely agree. Hopefully he can make a roster for sure. If
that's it,
nobody has anything else. If you do, definitely shout it out. But again, I know from what I was checking on the live viewership, just to see the amount of different viewers. Hopefully everybody who popped in tonight enjoyed. And for those who are still here and don't know the three that have joined me tonight graciously on this channel, as they, I think, plug their stuff one more time before we go out, encourage you to make sure you go follow them once they let you know we're here.
All right, Smitty.
Oh, was that my cue? You can find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH. I host a couple different podcasts. Around the 412, my co-host Tyler Weeks put out episodes 3 times a week talking Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates. And then I do another Monday through Friday podcast called Steelers Afternoon Drive. I think you can tell what the topic of that podcast is. It comes out 6 p.m. every weekday. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. I also want to give a shout out just because, I know this is on your channel, Jake, and we were streaming over here tonight during the draft. We had over 16,000 people over the last 2 nights between YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, tuning into the draft coverage. So appreciate everybody that was tapping in with us. So thank you if you were part of that.
Very cool. Very cool. CPGM Juice of Couch Potato General Manager. We like to think of everyone who kind of engages in the NFL draft as a Couch Potato General Manager, right? Everybody who's completing their mocks and trying to figure out and prognosticating as it relates to the rosters. That's what we do on the channel and YouTube. It's our primary mode of content. Again, Couch Potato General Manager on YouTube. Let's check us out.
Real quick, one more player. Did Marcus Bowe get drafted?
Oh no! Shoot, I
saw the name and I'm like,
yes,
I don't remember him getting drafted.
Great catch. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why that's so funny to me. Probably because it's 2 a.m. and I'm delirious. But
that was just so good.
No,
that's as good of a way to end it as possible. Gosh, I was
I
staring
tend to
right
do
at
that.
him too. I stared right at him and I just forgot. Thank you.
I kept looking at him like, I don't think anybody drafted him, so I just wanted to bring him up. But he's another guy to watch. Probably one of the top interiors at this point. But CPGM Drew from Couch Potato, general manager. Like you said, all of us are general managers from the couch. Trying to build our teams up and give our opinion on what we think. And I think at times a lot of us would do better than the guys running the show. But we're not in it, so we continue to do this and enjoy it, and hope the GMs are listening. And
they be ear hustling.
Yeah,
maybe not the GMs, but some of these national scouts definitely check out the content, man.
I don't know if
Cost is on draft Twitter. He is. There's no.
I don't know if this will make its. I don't know if this will make its way to him. But Casey Weidel, who's on the Steelers scouting staff, Andy's brother, watches our podcast. So
let's go.
There you go.
Nice.
There you
go. If you're in here, DeCosta, just give us a give us a signal or something. I know you hang around on draft Twitter. There's no.
Also,
way.
I hate you.
Also, I hate you.
Stop being so good at your job. Yeah, I think Drew made a little pointed. We do better than the GMs. That might be at Cincinnati. I don't know. I'm not saying. I'm just saying who it was at.
I'll tell you one thing, and this is probably a good way to bring it full circle. If we were GMs of the NFL teams, Shedeur Sanders is on a roster right now.
There it is. That's good stuff. Right
there. So let me say this one last thing. Has anybody committed draft malpractice? We do it every year. Can you think of anybody that's committed? And it's the worst of the worst. They're getting the F. There's no way back. They can't fix it. They're gonna have to go get that insurance, that malpractice insurance.
There's definitely one that comes to mind.
Saints? Is it the Saints?
It might be.
Yeah.
I like Banks.
Banks cleans it up for you, keeps it from going down that road.
Yeah, the Tyler Shuck, man, it got me shook. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Shuck got you shook.
Shuck got me shook.
I mean, I depending on what. And this is again, like you're just saying, with the value they got in the draft, right? So like we can't necessarily go based off what their players are going to turn into. But I go back to the one I brought up immediately with Cincinnati. To me, not that I'm saying that's like complete flop. It's not malpractice, but like that's
maybe not malpractice. Maybe not malpractice, but disappointing for sure. That's disappointing.
Well, I ain't disappointed.
You're not. Yeah. Your fandom's like
he's like at least one team in this division. Yeah. At least one team in this division could keep us. It might not be the team, but man, must we discuss pick? What is it? Did I get it right? 94. I think you need some insurance for that one. Okay, Cleveland, you're gonna need some.
That's Dylan Gabriel. For that. I was like, who the hell was 94?
Yep, that's who it is. So.
Yeah, we need to call the lawyers, get them in the room.
We do.
Have a conversation.
We got to let them know. We will be contacting them in the morning. At the very least. So
suit will be served. So will be filed.
There's gonna be something for sure. But thank you to you three. Gosh, I've never been more fired up to do this. When I went and go to get a snack quick in between these things to see you three in here, because this was a blast. 2 hours flew by. Gosh, I want to do more of this in the future for sure, because man, it's just fun to do this and talk ball like this. So I love it. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out this late, and thank you to those who are viewing this late, because we know that you're the true sickos like us, because if we're up this late, right, at least doing something, you're just sitting and watching. So that's some true sicko stuff. You're just sitting and watching, right? You don't even have, but so like we really appreciate that. If you could hit the thumbs up on the way out.
Couch potato without the GM.
Yeah, exactly. There it is.
Yes.
There it is. It's like, man, I just can't get enough of stuff at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Eastern, whatever it is. But Yeah, hit the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to all their channels. I'll link all of that down below because I'm sure there are going to be some overnight viewers because I know around this time people cannot get enough of the draft. Juice and Drew, you guys going to be breaking down the classes, right? Is that part of the schedule, perhaps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We
thought
are
so.
we are
Okay.
going to take a look
Okay.
at all 32. The way we break it up, we haven't fully decided. I don't know that we're going to go through all 32 in one fell swoop. We've done that in the past, and we're a bit long-winded, so that turns into 4 or 5 hours. So we'll probably break it up over several streams, but yeah, definitely going to do a recap.
Okay. Awesome. So obviously, Smith will have
Division by division.
We've done it that way before too. Maybe that's the way to go.
It's always a fun way to do it. You get some people fighting in the comments, you know.
Yeah.
Some clashing.
I will
going
be
on.
at war
There you
with
go.
Ravens fans and Bengals. I don't really
Yeah.
care about the Browns. They picked Dylan Gabriel. But
Yeah.
It's good.
Are they
They're good.
serious? They traded out of Hunter. Yeah. You know,
You
we could riff
mentioned-
on that again, but
No practice. What did we think of the Dolphins draft class thus far?
honestly,
Take a peek.
well, I thought they were going to come up for Amos, and I'm like, oh, that's
they were what? Kenneth Grant.
And then
I've got
Jonah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So Jonah wasn't bad. I think that's.
I
I think
think-
that's a better pick than the Kenneth Grant. I just don't like the value for Kenneth Grant when they got
That's
him.
a trade up. That's a
What
trade
did
up.
they
though, for
trade
Jonah,
up?
right?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
The trade up for Jonah is the thing. What did
Is
they give
the
up?
issue.
Yeah. I think in terms of addressing the trenches, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But this is another team that I was thinking, maybe they left some meat on the bone there.
Yeah.
yeah. I think if Kenneth Grant gets to the ceiling that you think he might be able to get, then I think
Sure.
I think you're fine.
it certainly
Yeah.
clears some of that up. Which again, there's a lot of that in the draft of betting on the ceiling. I could certainly see him and a couple of his peers going to Arizona and Pittsburgh that could maybe outshine
Mhm.
Graham in terms of the
Mhm.
ceiling, but
Mhm.
obviously Graham's going to provide the floor. So I truly thought they were coming up for Amos, and I thought, oh wow, they're going Grant Amos. Not going to argue with that.
Sure.
You guys can rest the rest of the night. You're good. You can rest. But yeah, I don't know. If they're going to keep with what they're doing offensively,
Mhm.
does Jonah fit as well? Are the movement skills top notch for what they're trying to do? I imagine he's going to play guard. So
Yeah.
that maybe
Yeah.
at the very least you're not having him out on the island, even though I think he's done a nice job in either spot at Arizona. But as you said, again, Fitz aside, the trenches, you can never fault the process at the
Right.
very least with
Right.
that. Will the Jonah trade work out? I know a lot of people who said that they thought, Jonah was going to be going in the 50s and 60s and it was going to be excellent value. And, we'll look back on it very fondly. And again, maybe all that's going to end up mattering is just the two names at the top, right? Because again, you're not going to get, I don't know how many picks these guys have. My goodness, we got a lot of fifth rounders. Whoa, three.
Seventh rounders. Yeah.
We got 7 picks
They'll be
tomorrow.
busy. They'll be
So
busy tomorrow.
they certainly will. And again, every draft, calling it a success is again, I think measured by, you get, couple quality starters and then maybe a starter and some rotational players mixed in. Like that's going to be extremely successful. So if we look back on this and they've had these guys for a long time, we'll obviously tip the cap. So yeah, a little weird, right? I think if you're not a big Grant fan, that's maybe where it starts. And yeah, the massive trade. There were some, as we said, Smitty, you brought up Detroit. There were some massive move ups for some guys I wasn't expecting to be a part of the massive move ups.
Right.
And this
Right.
was sort of one of them. But
Yeah.
hey, maybe they go get Bo tomorrow at 116 and then we're just, the
Yeah,
heavy
okay.
commitment. And because Juice, we talked about this on Wednesday. I wasn't sure they were going to pick O-line at all. I thought they were going to be extremely hard-headed and stubborn and like, nah, we're good with what we have. So at least they did that.
Right.
Drew says Miami could take Shedeur. I mean,
We got the concussion case from Tua. So
To a struggle to stay healthy. He's
Yeah.
a backup at this point.
quick distributor, great accuracy down the field to hit two guys who can stretch it.
Yeah.
I've heard worse ideas, that's for sure. So maybe But again, we come back full circle where we started talking about Shedeur. But that's all right. That's all right. Listen, the league might have colluded, and that's what they wanted us to do. They wanted us to do it, I guess. But yeah, is anyone live tomorrow? Is anyone? Are you
only
guys
only if
going?
we draft Shedeur?
Only if we draft Shedeur.
You said that.
We will dabble. I don't think we're
Okay.
gonna go poll to poll, but we will check in on the Shedeur watch.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you guys are interested tomorrow and want to maybe do a little recap like this again, obviously would love to have you for that. If we want to do it on another channel, if someone else wants to host, that's also fine. This was just far too much fun, and then this is why I love draft season, the collabs and all the great people you can meet, because you see all the people you meet just online and in this space, I think is truly special stuff, and I am just grateful that I've met all of you, and we get to do stuff like this because it is very, very cool. Again, for those sickos, there's 18 people still in here at 1 a.m. Central, 2 a.m. Eastern. What you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? But again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much, because no, Drew, I don't think so. Because if I'm going to Lambeau tomorrow, I got some stuff to get done. I want to make sure the Washington Commanders fans know some stuff about their new corner one, perhaps, and obviously the Green Bay. But yeah, I might not sleep. We'll see. But what's going on up there? What's the hand in the?
You're nuts. You're nuts.
Smitty's running off fumes, man. He's
That's
running
what
off
this week
fumes.
is. That's what this week is. You know, that's what this week's about. It's about testing the limits. You know, well, Drew, I imagine that since you're up in Green Bay, they've still been partying. They don't know what to do with themselves. 2 receivers, they have no idea what to do up there. So, but yeah, thank you again so much. Thumbs out on the way out. I will have all of their links, including Twitter follows, because they're obviously as well just making sure if you're like, oh, I don't do YouTube notifications, you follow them there. They're always tweeting or retweeting when they're live as well. So again, thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate y'all sticking with us on this ride. It was a very fun one, perhaps the most fun stream I've done in quite some time. So yeah, thank you guys so much again, and I'm sure we will all in some capacity see you soon. Take care, everybody, and good night.
Have a good one.